Folks, it's Tuesday night, which means hail the High Council here on World Class Bullshitters. I'm your host, Jeff Hicks, and with me tonight are my co-hosts. First off, you know him, you love him all the way from the Rippaverse. Say hello to Andy Andrew.
What is going on, High Council? What is going on, High Council chat? It is great to see you all. I hope you're doing fantastic. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you're having a great week so far. It's been quite the time in the geek space this last week. There's been some big news that's dropped. Lots of theories bouncing around, and excited to chat with the guys about it.
Yeah, folks, it's going to be an exciting show tonight. First off, because Andrew and I are here, but of course, because we're joined by our other co-host for the evening. Say hello to the Script Doctor.
Hey, everybody. So happy to be back. Let me just raise my hand and congratulations here, and then we'll lower it like that. It's always a pleasure to be here. We have some really fun news, not just with regards to what's been announced at Comic-Con, but we also have a box office weekend that theaters are very happy with as well, plus a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about. So it's going to be a fun night for everyone.
Yes, so folks, the way you can show your support right now is hit that thumbs up button to let YouTube know that you enjoy this content and share the stream. Even if you just copy and paste the URL and don't share it, it shares on the platform. So go ahead, take advantage of that and help WCBS grow as quick as we can. So folks, tonight, as you know, we're going to be covering what Script mentioned, what we mentioned in the title card, and a whole lot more. But before we get into that, I just want to do some quick housekeeping and say thank you to everybody. Wokebusters passed its goal. We're waiting for the funding to roll in. Then it's off to the printer and directly to you. So I want to thank everybody once again for making that happen. Folks, we couldn't have done it without you. But there's nothing else to talk about with Wokebusters. It's been done. I'm happy with it, and you'll have it in your hands soon. But, folks, let's get tonight's show started because we have... Well, let's get the big news out of the way first. Over the weekend, we had the San Diego Comic-Con. Now, San Diego Comic-Con is many things. It is the mecca for toys. You get all kinds of comic book information, but more recently, it has become the hub for everything branded IP. And nothing is bigger in terms of branded IP than the Marvel Universe. Now, the Marvel Universe has been on a bit of a decline as of late. The films haven't been hitting as much until recently, but overall, fan morale is fairly low, and it continues to be low for some reason. So, the big announcement at Comic-Con wasn't a Squirrel Girl film, wasn't a Steve Ditko memorial, sadly. No, it was the return of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. And like most of you, as Dr. Doom. And like most of you, I went, huh? And so tonight, we're going to talk about the fact that even though this news is supposed to break the internet, it seems like nobody cares. It seems like a lot of people are apathetic, and we're going to talk about if that's dangerous for Marvel, if it's too late for DC, and a whole lot more. So, guys, let's start it off this way, nice and easy. We'll start with you, Script. What were your initial reactions when you heard the news about Robert Downey Jr.'s return to Marvel?
Well, it wasn't even just that it was Robert Downey Jr. It was also the Russo brothers, and the rumor that Stephen McFeely and Chris Marquay, I think it is. I keep forgetting the two last names. The two bald guys that have written most of the MCU are supposed to be coming back for these Avengers films, and also one of them being Avengers Doomsday. I thought it was an interesting and bold choice, and I think there was way more to it because on the surface, it seems like a dumb, desperate idea, and I would have fully agreed to that. But at the same time, it's too dumb for Disney. And the reason being is that regular studios make their own dumb stuff. I mean, everything they did with the Eternals, Shang-Chi, the Marvels, all that stuff. That's dumb in a different ideological way. This would seem like it's dumb in a marketing way, but because one thing that you can say for Marvel, at least under the MCU, is that when they do characters of this level of prominence, of A-tier characters, such as Doctor Doom, they try to keep it authentic. And there's nothing more inauthentic than to get a named actor like Robert Downey Jr., who is known for his face, and then put him in a mask for that character. And it would also be incredibly inauthentic and unlike Marvel to actually have Doctor Doom be Doctor Doom without the mask. So it seems, Mike, they're not going to be doing this. And I saw your video about the infamous Iron Man topic and what they're going there, like the 2016. A lot of people are actually leaning into the 2016 stuff, but I think it has more to do especially with the mode that I've been hearing that's going on over at Marvel with their purge of a whole bunch of activist producers and writing teams that have not been delivering on what they wanted to do. I think they're going back to a story that was written and then released about a year after Disney purchased Marvel, and that was Demon in an Armor. And that gimmick there, so what if story, is that Victor Von Doom essentially pulls a Freaky Friday on Tony Stark. And his personality, his mind is inside Tony Stark's body, and Tony Stark's mind is inside Dr. Doom's body. And the best reason I'm going for that is because, and this is a question I raised with my buddies after we saw Endgame, which was, what happened to Iron Man's body after he died? But like, we don't see a coffin, we don't see him put in a grave. All we get is them on a lake putting his proof that Tony Stark has a heart arc reactor out onto the water. So that's an opening, because and that could be used in some manner. And the other part too, and actually I know Marvel wouldn't do this because because they know it actually hurt more. They're not going to use a Tony Stark variant from another time universe in there, because what's going to happen with the backlash of fans? Well, it's not the Tony Stark we saw. It's not our Tony Stark. It's another Tony Stark. They don't want that. They don't want to have to start from scratch from that. I think we're probably going to get a weird resurrection story that is orchestrated by Doom. And it's the arc is Tony Stark getting his body back. And whoever is going to be playing the actual Victor Von Doom will be a closely guarded secret up until the very last minute. And it will most likely, and the other part too, you also have to consider is Dr. Doom is primarily going to be a voiceover role and a stunt guy in a suit. It's going to be basically the Darth Vader approach. And that's what they're probably going to be going for. They will get someone with a very...
Don't burn a casting like RDJ on something.
Exactly. Like, or similar to like Hugo Weaving in V for Vendetta. Like Hugo Weaving wasn't in the costume at all, ever. Yeah. And the thing is, Hugo Weaving's not going to come back for this, because I have it on 1 degree of separation with me, words from his mouth, that he does not want to do big movie tentpole things anymore. He wants to do more independent, contemporary, artistic films of various genres under the $100 million budget. So that leads, and then I was telling you guys before the show, I won't mention her name because I don't want her to get in trouble, but I was also talking to someone who has been Robert Downey Jr.'s personal assistant for a number of years, no longer there. And we were shooting the breeze on this topic, and she told me in no uncertain terms that if Robert Downey Jr. was going to come back to the Marvel universe, it would always be as Tony Stark, and his wife, Susan Downey, would never let him play another role that wouldn't end up him being Tony Stark in the end. Mm-hmm. So I suspect that's what's going to be the case here. I think we're going to get a really interesting arc. Whether they can stick the landing, that's a high target to hit, man. Like, that is a high target to hit, because you have to present the gimmick that Doom is so evil that he is able to puppeteer one of our most beloved Marvel characters, and that it's up to Tony Stark, and maybe with the assist of the Fantastic Four, to right this error that has been done and bring him back to Pepper and his daughter.
That, I'll make you a Dukes Brothers bet that's better than what we'll actually get.
I think it will be, yes.
I don't want to, dump on the dream. Andrew, same question to you though, my friend. What were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts were, I think, the same as a lot of other people. It was just kind of like a... What?
Yeah.
Like, because there's that split second where you see Robert Downey Jr. again, and he's on the stage at SDCC, and it's for a Marvel production. And there's that split second where you want to be excited, and then you're like, "But Doom? What?" So I think I'm in the same boat as a lot of other people, where it's like, if we just take things as face value, I think script presented,
which is absolutely reasonable to do. Yeah,
right. I think because right now, Marvel in the last several years hasn't given much reason to give them benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of me, not that I won't hope that they prove me wrong, because I always would rather enjoy these things. I would always rather for these to be good, turn out well, everybody has a good time at the theater, and then we continue to get good things, because in a good world where businesses are intelligent and operate off of Business 101, they see that the audience responds positively to something, so they double and triple down on that, because that's what's going to make them more money and make the audience more happy. And it's cyclical that way, right? It's a nice symbiotic relationship. I don't know if I'm confident enough to say that's what's going to happen. So I'm just going to not ignore that very well laid out and entirely feasible argument that Script just made. If I am just to look at it at face value, it feels like a waste. If, again, the premise here being that we're just taking it at face value for what they showed us on the stage there. I hope 1000% that Script is actually right here. Because if they pulled that off, and that's a big if, because there's a lot working against them with this, right? That's one, just a difficult story to tell and tell well to begin with, especially when we're talking about a character that's as kind of beloved and now kind of set into not just fans and general audience kind of hearts and minds and memories, but RDJ kind of became just the personification of Iron Man in the cultural zeitgeist, right? Yeah. He is Iron Man. Like, there's really no other way about that. He is Iron Man like almost no other actor has ever embodied a like major licensed character in such a way. I would argue he is more Iron Man than we would, and some people are going to get mad at me in the chat, watch this, than somebody like even Christopher Reeve as Superman.
Definitely shoulder to shoulder at the bare minimum, because one thing that that Robert Downey Jr. and his team was able to do with Iron Man is make him from C level to A level in one movie, where Superman was already an A tier character.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Iron Man was a C tier character until they were smart. They started off with Iron Man. If we can make Iron Man work, we can make a lot of things work.
Oh yeah. Well,
I made it work
at Paramount Studios in my internship at the time. They wanted to go with a low risk hero where if it bombed, it wouldn't actually hurt. They could reset or do another one years later.
Yeah.
That they also didn't have the rights to Spider-Man. They didn't have Hulk, even though they were negotiating them at the time, and they didn't have the X-Men, which they would have loved to have done. So they're like, well, what's a safe character? Well, we can do Iron Man. Okay, what's the next safe character? Thor and Captain America. Because unfortunately, like, these are B, C, D level characters compared to what we know we can get from what we know Spider-Man did.
Right.
And they pulled it off.
They did. They pulled it off with characters that were B and C listers.
Exactly. And
then D listers, if you want to talk Guardians.
Oh,
they aimed for E listers or F listers when they went for Eternals, and then people were like, you're pushing it a little bit.
The thing is, Eternals were terrible in the comics anyways. Kirby was kind of off his game there.
It's not Kirby's best stuff.
Yeah. Art was beautiful, but I don't know what he was trying to get with that.
He's not a writer for a reason.
However, like, the thing is that when it looks like it, and I was talking to Chris Gore about this, and he got the sense of the tone that Feige acquiesced to what he thought was the next generation of the marketing ploy with regards to what happened with phases 4 and 5. And the data came in overwhelmingly against it. And I think he basically was the type of guy who's like, okay, you know what? We're changing gears. We're going back to basics. And what better way to signify that than bringing back Robert Downey Jr., who is the most basic of foundations of what the MCU stood for.
He was the foundation of the MCU. He was the MCU. Like,
he was the face of the MCU.
Cap was like the second guy.
No, 100%. And I remember at the time, and on paper, it was a smart idea until they got a couple of other people wrong, which is that they brought in Brie Larson before she went all crazy, who's now kind of balanced out recently. But they brought her in and said she's going to be the successor to Tony Stark going forward. Yeah. And if they made a really good Captain Marvel film, that would have worked, maybe. But they didn't. They had two directors on there, two directors that were directing two different movies, trying to wedge it together. A terrible interpretation of a beloved character prior to whatever they did in the comics around that time with Gail Simone and not Gail Simone, Connick.
It was Kelly Sue DeConnick in 2012 was when they rebooted the character as Captain
Two
Marvel.
Unqualified redheads working in comics is
it's just ruin a beloved character of mine.
Exactly. And and the other part too is, and you know what ended up happening? Chadwick Boseman stole the show, and his untimely passing kind of really hurt Marvel.
Yeah.
And I will say this: the only character aside, the only character that they've ever actually recast deliberately so was Terrence Howard as Rhodey, James Rhodes.
Yeah.
I think that's part of their brand right now is like, we're not necessarily recasting Robert Downey Jr. as another character. We've got a story here. This is us trying to subconsciously tell you that Iron Man is coming back, and this is how we're going to do it. Because the only reason Harrison Ford is in those things is because John Hurt passed away.
Yeah.
He was Thunderbolt Ross. He was signed to do those movies before he died.
It just took them a really long time to get around to, telling those stories that would actually involve him. No, absolutely. I think
they were
here's my worry.
He was very healthy for a very long time, and then his death was kind of sudden, and nobody was just like with Chadwick Boseman. Nobody was expecting it.
My concern is if they do go the route where like this is actually a distraction over here, right? The whole Doom thing, and they're actually working in this more intricate story that's going to end up bringing Tony back as Iron Man, bringing RDJ back as Tony Stark Iron Man. I'm worried because there's so much working against them right now. They have, how many years has it been since Endgame? 6 years. So they have 6 years worth of mediocre to garbage back-to-back films and TV series working against them that wound up resulting in not just the reactionary spaces, our space here, like negative reactions, but resulting in the just general apathy from us and the general audience, which is what the movie medium is for. The movie medium, you want your general audience, your gigantic audience for something that's supposed to be a big blockbuster. Because if only super well-read comic book fans went to see these movies, they'd make some money, but it wouldn't be anything on the same scale as when you're trying to rope in general audiences. Comic books are a niche medium. And so to only rely solely on that, you want to make us happy, but to only rely solely on that would be foolish.
You wouldn't even make $100 million off of a movie if you only were there for the fans.
No, you'd be actually in the $10 million range, tens of $1 million range, sadly, just because the percentage aggregate between normal audience and comic book fans is quite wide. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And then you also have your comic book fans. It's like a comic book fan doesn't give a crap about Iron Man or, about any other character. Like comic book fans, we can be finicky. We're very selective. We have our characters we like. We have our characters we don't give a shit about. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I'm worried that if they're doing that, that might get lost in the sauce. Right. They might have this really well-planned story in the back of their minds. And maybe the execution's even really good, but the audience apathy might just be so bad with their current presentation. So with what I mean by that is, again, going back to that face value bit, where what they are presenting to us currently, outside of those of us who are either theorizing that they might have something else going on behind the scenes or what have you, that might just be kind of the turnoff for people. And they're like, no, I'll wait, and maybe it's a wait and see for me. Instead of, I feel like they need a hook that gives kind of classic MCU fans. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about like the general audiences. They're not comic book fans, but they were invested in the MCU. Like they saw Iron Man all the way through Endgame and probably a couple after until they realized it was dog water. They give that audience some sort of a hook, some sort of a little hope, a tease even, that gives them reason to believe that there's a chance that this is actually a distraction and that there's actually something else going on. And we are going to see RDJ back as Iron Man, because if it ultimately is just him playing Doom, RDJ is a phenomenal actor, and I love him in just about anything that I've seen him in, but I don't care to see him as anybody else in a Marvel movie than Tony Stark.
I think Marvel's of the same mindset. And to your point,
I hope you're right.
I don't think they're going to, in any sort of obvious manner, present this as a distraction, because they're not trying to subvert your expectations. They're trying to give you a genuine surprise of an oh shit moment.
Then I think they need to have some sort of a deliberate leak.
Well, anything of that nature would tip the hat, because they like this right now. Marvel's in a situation where a spoiler would usurp everything that they want to achieve to earn their audience back at this point. And I think it's a Hail Mary pass. I mean, I think they're going into the sense where they'll look at certain personalities and say, if we do this, we will aggravate the trolls. They will generate enough speculation, conjecture, everything that we need to get people really, really riled up about this. And then when we finally do it, it ends up being nothing like what they say. It will make fans scream for joy.
I understand that line of thinking, actually, and I'm not entirely sure I disagree with that. However, my counter argument to that would be the leaks that we saw for No Way Home. And however people feel about No Way Home, because I think it's actually a mid-ass film that's propped up by its third act, that got people losing their minds. And then we saw, obviously, the return on how well that did at the box office, right? So I feel like there's an argument to be made for either position there, but I'm just presenting the counterpoint on that, where
I think it's a fair one too.
We have a working example of, hey, there was actually a fairly significant leak, or at least something that was like, hey, I feel like it looks, because remember that screenshot that we saw where it was just the way the shot was set up clearly made it look like there were other characters that were supposed to be on screen in it, right? And it was from the final battle where,
you're talking about the teaser that was released where the lizard is punched by an invisible something.
Correct. Yeah, punched by nothing.
Yeah.
And so something like that could even just like tip off audiences, because then all of a sudden you start getting the theory videos made, right? And that will create positive, I think, interaction and engagement, and that could hype up people, because I think they need, in order to overcome the apathy, in order to overcome the just general earned negativity surrounding the MCU, they need to like get our side kind of at least semi-engaged in a at least interested way. I don't think people have to be necessarily hyped for it over on this side, but I think if you get some people that have reach, all of a sudden curious, where they're like, "Ooh, wait, what are they doing there?" Right? And all of a sudden you start building some momentum, and if you combine that with all your general audiences that typically will scroll YouTube anyway, maybe they come across those videos, spread that like wildfire. I think this film needs a lot of positive pre-press.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they do. I will say this. One of the things
to the tune of No Way Home.
Oh, well, that could work. I will say this. So Marvel is trying to play chicken with Warner Brothers right now by having Fantastic Four go up against Superman. Fantastic Four is going to get moved. It just is. Marvel definitely knows its place. And if they don't move it, I think that's going to split their box office for those first 2 weekends for sure, until people figure out which movie is going to be the one they want to see again.
And then I think ultimately it would end up hurting both films.
Yes. So yeah, that's going to be a chicken game. Warner Brothers already had that slot booked a year and a half ago. Fantastic Four booked it late last year and then just announced it. So they're most likely the ones that are going to be moving. I think they'll probably move for Labor Day and make it a Labor Day release, because they want to, take advantage of that weekend.
Yeah, take advantage of a free 3-day weekend. Why not?
Yes. So I have great deal of reservations on Fantastic Four, but I think the only way this Robert Downey Jr. as Victor Von Doom thing is going to work is if Fantastic Four works. And Fantastic Four is notorious for actually not working on film, or even in cartoons.
Yeah.
So
it's notorious for not working in really any medium for a few decades now. If we're being completely transparent about it, I think
it's because it was initially conceived as a non-superhero book. It was just a family of four. One's a scientist, one's a woman for some reason, one's a monster, and one's a flaming guy. And they happen to find themselves involved with Mole Man, Skrulls, Galactus, even though they're trying to do their own thing. It's kind of like a sitcom masquerading as a superhero show.
Yeah, it definitely feels very 60s TV.
I'm
to a
curious
faulty
to know if this Fantastic Four film will do something that could set up people to start thinking, oh, maybe, okay, so we're getting Victor Von Doom, but I don't think it's actually ultimately RDJ, right? So going
Well,
back to where it's like a feint, it's a fake out.
the only information I know is that there's no physical presence of Doom in the Fantastic Four film.
Yeah. Or wait, actually, didn't they say that it was supposed to be it's like a multiversal film? It's in a different, it takes place in a different universe.
Nope, they just said it takes place in the 1960s.
with a retro future.
And it's a retro future. So basically what they're doing is they're playing off of the Howard Stark hover car from the World's Fair in World War II.
Yeah.
And they're just taking that to its logical step in the 60s. Because again, the next time we actually see what Marvel is like in the past is the 70s, and that's in a private army base. We actually don't see the rest of the world and what's going on there, really. So we have no idea really what it looks like. But the way that I am taking a guess at it, just putting my screenwriter mind in play, is that Reed Richards and his company, which is like called Forward Future or something of that nature, is supposed to be leading the private industry with regards to space race and modernizing technology and all that stuff. And whatever mission happens here with regards to Galactus causes them to vanish from Earth for X amount of decades. And when they maybe they're trapped in the negative zone or what have you. And when they come back, it's current day. And maybe, and I would suspect, this is what I would suspect, is that Doom was a villain that they had fought before their power transformation or whatever and stopped him, or I don't know what. But because he is old and dying, he snatches Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark and puts himself in that body after healing it and whatnot, and tries to come back as another Phoenix story for Iron Man. And Pepper Potts and, of course, his kid don't trust him, along with Happy, and he's behaving erratically and whatnot. And that's a whole nother story. And when the Fantastic Four return, they identify what it is and they help set things right. And now Iron Man is alive and returned, and he's there, head of the Avengers again. And Doom is now either in a cloned body or something, or goes back into his old body, or maybe he does that whole magic thing where his soul's imbued into a robot and it's just automated, or I don't know. There's so many convoluted things that Doom has done over the decades.
Yeah,
It's hard I think something. Fantastic Four.
Yeah, no, it is. I think something that could actually come out as a positive out of that is that if you end up involving the Fantastic Four in that Avengers Doomsday plot in such a way where they are a very active participant as well as an actual solution to solving this give with Doom and Tony, with the idea and premise that this is actually the direction they're going, obviously. Sure. That could help give them a very necessary boost. Because I'm not convinced that even if this Fantastic Four film that's coming out knocks it out of the park in terms of the scripting, the acting, the pacing, all of that, I'm not convinced it's going to do gangbusters. I'm not going to convince the audiences are going to be super hot on it, because historically, just as you said, Fantastic Four has not worked well in basically any medium, certainly in live action, ever. And I think that will, kind of endear that team to the audience if they're interacting with and assisting with these other characters, the general audiences and us that have, been invested in the MCU for so long. If they're helping these characters that we're already endeared to, that will, by extension, help endear those characters to us as well.
I agree.
You start to build some goodwill there, right? There are few better ways to introduce a new character that you're like, okay, this character isn't gonna just like on their own. You have no designs of this character on their own, just being right out the gate some breakout superstar, and they're gonna be able to stand on their own right away. You somehow attach that character to another character that people already enjoy, and as long as you're doing your job with the writing with this newer character, obviously the Fantastic Four aren't new, but they're going to be new to a lot of people. That's a great way to subsequently endear that team to a new audience. And I honestly hope that's what happens, and hope that that's successful, because it's kind of sad and pathetic that Marvel's first family has been like the least successful thing in live action for them, if we're not counting the Marvels.
The Roger Corman stuff. Well, yeah, I will put it to you this way. Luck. Well, I don't know if it's luck or not, but Fantastic Four has been confirmed to be in both Avengers films. So we're going to be seeing them in 3 movies.
Okay.
The next 3 movies after Thunderbolts and Captain America.
I mean, it would be kind of insulting if they didn't have them a part of the Avengers film that's centered around Doom.
Yeah, there's also rumors that Deadpool is going to be part of those movies as well in some capacity, which is like it's up in the air as to what.
It's more Deadpool than I actually need. I still haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine, by the way. I've been so busy with work, I haven't had a chance to go see it and see which side I end up landing on.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely not a cinematic reset as many speculated.
No, it just continues down a path that I wasn't too interested in. I mean, like I said last week, guys, it's a fine movie. It's not a game changer, and I don't think I'll ever watch it again. I don't really want to watch Deadpool 2 again either. So
it actually feels more like a Deadpool 2 sequel than a Deadpool movie, because the first Deadpool had something to it.
Yeah.
And actually, the first Deadpool had a proper plot. This one has a very convoluted plot, and it's a sketch show for 2 hours, and it's also a shorter runtime than Deadpool 2, which actually makes it a little bit better than Deadpool 2 in that regard. I will say this: this movie is kind of an FU to Fox and an FU to Disney at the same time. And
Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yes, and it's also. And it's also a we were right thing as well, because of putting Hugh Jackman in the suit.
Oh, with the mask and everything?
Yeah, because the audience actually responded really well. The mask does, aside
every
from
single shot that I've seen of him in it in the full getup, it's like, dude, that looks freaking rocking. Like
they made it work. There's only one shot where the mask didn't look right, and that's just because the design of the mask doesn't allow you to take that shot and make it look right. It doesn't look like stuff.
Was it the end of the movie where he's standing down in the sewer or the thing talking to Deadpool before they go their own separate ways?
Yeah, it's kind of like
because I thought that shot looked horrible.
He has a half turn, and so his face looks like flat from one side, but I'm like, that's actually how it would look. But the comic books never do that. They always cheat they always cheat it.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what, that's it makes it look flat, but you know what, it felt weird because I'm so used to the comic stuff, but it felt more authentic on film because that's actually how it would kind of look. But I will say, from all the other angles that they had of it, it works. It works out quite well, and it basically makes people say, "Yeah, we could have had this 25 years ago, if you weren't so." Again, this is the other part too. This is the pompousness of Hollywood, where they're like, yes, we make fantasy for people of all ages, but comic books is beyond us. We have to make it our type of fantasy. We have to put them in tight leather outfits with no masks and stuff, instead of leaning into the costume. And the only reason they say they don't want to do that is because there's been a lot of poor attempts that have occurred, especially on the Marvel side, with the Captain America live action TV movies from the 70s, with the Captain America live action feature film of the late 80s, where they really just didn't get the costume designers to actually think about how to do this to make it look good on film. They're just like, oh, we'll just do what's in the comics. And if it looks ridiculous, who cares? At least it's authentic to the comics. Like, no, there's a way you can balance this out. And they actually found a costume designer, kind of figured out a way to do it. And there's still other variations that could come up there. I will say this, the brown and gold Wolverine costume that they used in that throwback to Wolverine versus Hulk, and they do the nod to the Todd McFarlane cover with the Hulk's reflection in the claws. That actually looked good as well, and worked. And if you threw the mask on with that, it was part of the brief cameos, really quick.
That's what threw me off, because I'm an older comic book fan. So when Wolverine and the Hulk faced off and Deadpool goes, "That's when you fought the Hulk," I'm like, Wolverine wore a blue and yellow suit.
He did. He wore the original costume, but they brought in the other one.
Yeah, because I was like, oh wait, they did fight in the 80s. Somebody in the internet the other day was like, oh, Todd McFarlane, one of the best Wolverine artists. I'm like, really? For one cover and a couple of appearances? He's not even in the top 10 Wolverine artists, man.
Silvestri has done a more iconic Wolverine cover.
Yeah, like
that was
I say that like I have so much respect and love for McFarlane, but like I couldn't put his Wolverine above
McFarlane's
Sylvester's.
covers are very dramatic and good. Some of his interiors on Wolverine, if I think there are not many, forgettable, at least in my opinion.
It wasn't his strongest stuff.
No, he's better on Spider-Man, and then the Spawn stuff he did was exactly what he did.
Yeah, it's his best work. I mean, he's doing his own thing. He's not trying to fight the Marvel brass like he was for so long with Spider-Man.
I appreciate what he did though, because he even though I wouldn't put him in like my top 3 Spidey artists, I appreciate like the pushback that he gave the Marvel brass, as you said, because it allowed for some kind of evolution and, dare I say, progress in terms of the art used for the character. Because before that, Todd has said it before, and he was correct. It kind of all had a very similar look and feel, and that was like
trying
the Marvel...
to copy John Romita for 20 years straight. That is what it is, because that was the artist.
That was the look, and it's not like that's a bad way to go, but you want to let the art.
20 years, you want to change it.
Yeah, you shake it up a little bit, and that's why I don't mind as long as it's not in the same like 6-issue arc or in the middle of a graphic novel. You're switching up artists, because that pisses me off and drives my OCD insane. As long as you're not doing that, I'm fine with switching up the artists. And there were things that he brought to the table that are still used today, and I love it. I couldn't imagine not having Spidey's webs look a little more fantastical, a little more wild.
He didn't create that, though. He just copied it from Michael Golden directly. He even says it himself. There's a guy years before that had the spaghetti webbing.
Yeah, he popularized it. Yeah, he popularized it, though. And he was the one that was like, this is now a thing. This isn't a one-off thing now. Now it's like that. If you pick up a modern Spider-Man comic or any Spider-Man comic within the last 20 plus years now,
almost
9.5. Oh my God.
Yeah, 6 years from now it'll be. Wait, no. In 4 more years, it'll be 40 years. So 36 years, the spaghetti webbing's been a thing since my entire life. Before they were just, it was a net.
It was a net.
I just had a moment when you did that. Crap. Okay, well, my point still stands. Where like it's because of him that now within the last we'll just say 35 years, because I like numbers divisible by 5. That you could pick up a Spider-Man comic and 9 or more out of 10 times it's going to have webbing that's a little more like that.
Oh yeah,
and so things like that, or things like the bigger eyes. Like I love the bigger eyes. I hate when artists put like the small eyes on it. I like the bigger lenses. I think that's cooler.
It depends, because from the side it makes no sense the way they draw them, because you kind of draw Spider-Man's eye from the front as well as the side the same shape, and nobody ever questions it, because But when they're the big round
absolutely
ones,
right.
when you're doing the big round ones, you got to remember it's gonna be like this part of his face.
Yeah,
and so it's gonna like overlap the ear. It would look horrible in reality. Like if you tried to really create that look, like Andrew Garfield's as big as you can go on a human head. Other than that, I think you're going to look like a.
Oh yeah, if you tried to go, and that's why honestly the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit is my favorite live action suit. I think it's the best one because it manages to just reach that line for me of like getting it as close to how I like to see it in the comics without it being like, okay, so now it's kind of goofy and retarded, right?
I think there's something to be said about you guys were talking about a couple things actually, and we're going to check with the audience next. Yeah,
shit segment, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, folks, you know what? We're just going to wait. I'm going to check in with you now. So our friend Taylor Swift, greater than Disney, Star Wars, and MCU, before we even went live, sent in 3 super chats. So thank you, Taylor Swift, for these and your patience, and for being a member. How does the Deadpool trilogy rank among other comic trilogies? Captain America, Dark Knight, Tobey's Spider-Man, Holland's Spider-Man, Blade, Iron Man, Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, this is a good question, actually.
Ooh, that's a very good question. I would actually... Okay, what would I put it above? I would put it above Ant-Man. I would put it above... Blade Trinity is not a good movie.
Actually, it's kind of neck and neck because Blade Trinity and Deadpool Wolverine.
Well, for me, so I can't speak to the third one yet. Now that I think about it, So I don't even know why I'm answering this question because I haven't seen Deadpool Wolverine yet. I literally just realized it was thanks to script that reminded me, like, oh wait, we're talking about the Deadpool trilogy here. I've only seen the first two, and out of the two, I only like the first one. So
yeah, I really
right now that lines up so far with at least almost all of these because okay, so funnily enough, I think out of all of these, okay, so I actually like all the Captain America films well enough. So we're counting, yeah, you got Civil War as the third one. That's the one I like the least, but I still enjoy it. Dark Knight, I don't like Dark Knight Rises really. Tobey's Spider-Man, I like things about Spider-Man 3 enough that I'll rewatch it. Holland's Spider-Man, I'll rewatch No Way Home literally just for the third act. And by that, I mean, I'll skip to the third act and just watch that. So I don't like that trilogy at all on a whole. Iron Man, the first movie's phenomenal. The second movie was a big missed opportunity because they could have and should have. And Favreau wanted to do Demon in a Bottle.
Disney doesn't like alcoholism. Sorry.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, yeah, no.
Dead parents.
Yeah, dead parents, and it's not like Tony was already drinking anyway, right? Like he had literally a drunken scene in Iron Man 2 anyway. But nope, we can't call it alcoholism. So stupid. And then Iron Man 3 was also a missed opportunity because I think they didn't lean in enough to the PTSD angle of it. I think they spent too much time on silly stuff in that one.
The less we talk about Iron Man 3, the better. I don't like that movie at all. I tried rewatching it. No, I watched clips of it for the video I made, and I remember hating that movie. I was like, all right, the Avengers was awesome. Didn't like Iron Man 3, but you know what? We're working towards Thanos. I'm looking forward to that. So I had something that I was excited over. To answer the question, I'm going to say this trilogy is beneath Guardians, above Ant-Man, because only the first one is really great.
Mm-hmm.
That first movie was really rock solid. It was actually kind of better than it had any business being.
The first Iron Man's better than the first Deadpool. Okay. Iron Man 1 is so good that I'm going to put the Iron Man saga above it. But honestly, I'm going to put the Deadpool trilogy at the bottom of these listed here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The first one's great, but like, here's my quick process of elimination. Captain America would be at the top because you had one good film and two arguably great films. Then The Dark Knight, I prefer Batman Begins, and that's my favorite, tied to my favorite Batman movie. And
that's my favorite Batman movie in general, yeah.
And so both of those are going to beat all of the Deadpool movies, even if Dark Knight Rises sucks. Spider-Man 2 is the best superhero movie for me, so that beats the Deadpool trilogy. And the first one's awesome as well. Even though the third one's crap, it's still better than Deadpool 2. Then the Tom Holland Spider-Mans, you know what? Deadpool's going above those. Sorry, for sure. Blade trilogy.
Thank you. Respect stays.
Blade trilogy is, I love Blade 1, but Deadpool's going above that too. Iron Man is above Deadpool, and Ant-Man is below Deadpool. So honestly, just Tom Holland, Spider-Man, and Blade would I put beneath Deadpool.
Okay. Guardians is actually, like, on the whole, it's actually a solid trilogy. Like, the first one to me is the only one that's truly good. Like, really, really good. I love that first film. The second one, it's okay. Enjoy it. The third one, I enjoyed it well enough. I saw it in theaters. You know, I was like, okay, I had a good time with it. They did some stuff well, and then they did some other stuff, like, really not well. Like, the stuff with Adam Warlock kind of pisses me off. They wasted him. May as well have not even bothered having him.
Well, that's just because what James Gunn wanted to do, he wasn't allowed to do because Alan Horn
right, because they
him.
got rid of him. Yeah.
And then when he came back, he's like, you know what? I'm going to make this a good movie, but I'm going to kind of hamper you as well with the Adam Warlock character because you ruined what he was wanting to do. Because
because Adam Warlock should have been part of the Infinity movies.
Well, if I remember
what was planned
correctly, it was Guardians of the Galaxy 3 would have come right before Endgame.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and then we would have and should have had Adam Warlock, like that moment in Endgame where Captain People comes down, right, to face off against Thanos. That should have been Adam Warlock instead. And he should have had an actual real good knockdown drag out against him.
100%. So I would say Captain America trilogy is going to be at the top because it is actually one of the best ones. It's also written by the same writing team, so that kind of helps.
Probably why it's super consistent.
Toby's Spider-Man is I'll probably put that underneath Guardians of the Galaxies because again, Guardians of the Galaxies had the same creative team through it, and it is consistent. It's good, but Toby's Spider-Man, the only thing that hurts it is Spider-Man 3.
Agreed.
Followed closely by Iron Man, then Blade, then Holland and Ant-Man in that order. Or Dark Knight is Batman Begins is a better one. Dark Knight, the Dark Knight, I think has a very commie ending where the state manipulates the truth in order to gain C's power, which then is executed in Dark Knight Rises. So I think that's disrespectful to the character, which is why I really prefer Batman Begins over the other two.
Batman Begins is so good.
And yeah, that's my ranking there.
Thank you, Taylor Swift, for that. Now I kind of want to go back and rewatch Blade 1, but that's because of Deadpool. Taylor Swift also says, word of the day is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. All right, fine. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious all the way. There's my first film title.
Jingle all the way. All right, I appreciate that. I can take that.
There's a Turbo Man doll right here at all times.
Dude, I freaking love that you have that.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious bound.
Ooh, like Homeward Bound?
Yep.
Shit, okay. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious time machine.
Doctor Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, or the day I gave up and decided to love the bomb.
Let's see. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, the dragon. Because it's just like, what?
One more.
All I can think of is the damn song from Mary Poppins.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
That's the better one right there. I wish I would have come up with that. I love that.
That's a
good
Indiana
one. Jones. Teenage Mutant Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Turtles. I'm looking at shit around the room now. Sorry.
That is a very late 90s.
Oh, speaking of things around the room, so you might appreciate this, Jeff. I got this in the mail this week.
Ooh,
this is the Haya Toys Goji before he gets super irradiated, which was like midway through GXK, and before he evolves towards the third act of GXK. And I've got the other ones on pre-order. I'm super looking forward to them. Looking at this now, I'm extremely excited for, is it September's when I get Ghidorah? Yeah, I think Ghidorah ships. So that thing is 14 inches tall with like, I think it was like a 22 or 23 inch wingspan. I don't know where I'm putting these things. I just know that I'm getting them and I want them. I'm going to have to get
them from the ceiling.
Dude, oh my gosh. You said that and you might have been like trying to be funny, but now I'm just picturing the scene in Godzilla King of Monsters where Ghidorah is descending from the sky, and I'm just picture having him like suspended and to be the coolest shit ever. Do it. I'm gonna have to have a setup specifically for my Goji collection, because I ordered several figures this year after seeing GXK and IMAX in the early showing, because I was like, you know what, I am blessed and in a place right now where I can afford things that I never would have been able to get when I was a kid. And I had friends that had a lot of cool Godzilla stuff, and I had a couple of cool toys, but like, you know, I wasn't spoiled. I didn't have a ton of stuff. Now I can actually build my own Godzilla collection, and I'm not going to go crazy where I'm going to have a whole room filled with them, but I'm going to have several figures by year's end, and I'm looking forward to it.
Don't pull a me with like Wolverine or the Rock, where I got like more rock figures than I'm proud to admit. So if a new one comes out from an era that I like, I'm like, well, I don't care that this one's 99% the same as the other one. It's got different joints. I gotta have it and add it to the shelf.
He's your guy, though. Like, I get that. Like, I get every single Wally West Flash figure that releases that I can get my hands on. Like, it doesn't matter how many they come out with, and Trupadillo don't have to worry about that too much because he gets snubbed and rarely gets merch. So I just grab whatever they make.
I have that for I used to have that for Han Solo, but we all saw Disney Star Wars, so the less the better. But James Bond's like that, but they don't make anything for James Bond. So it's like, oh, wow. Once every decade, if I spend this much money, I can get something from James Bond.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I have to because it's all they're going to make. We had it good in the early 2000s. I didn't realize it because I was also in grade school, so I didn't have expendable income or disposable income. But it was like they were making sideshow dolls, little lead figurines, video games, soundtracks. James Bond was properly merchandised. Sometimes Hollywood, we do want to be sold a bunch of shit. Available.
We always want to be sold it. We just need to make sure that the brand has integrity. And brand integrity is a hard truth that Hollywood is coming to learn. Well, not necessarily. Technically, Disney is coming hard to learn. Me and some other channels have actually started going through the list, as I've mentioned on this channel a number of times. When you go back and you take a look at how many hugely woke movies the other studios that are not Disney has made,
very small,
very, very slim.
Yeah,
but if you go on the TV side of things, it's a little bit more dicey. But it's Hollywood by and large learned a lesson a few years ago, and now they're kind of on the rise to say, hey, yeah, we're actually doing some really fun, cool stuff again. You know, you had the Family Plan, you had the Fall Guy, you had Oppenheimer, you have you had Despicable Me is doing really well. That doesn't have any of that type of stuff in there. Deadpool and Wolverine.
Twisters did well.
Deadpool and Wolverine, despite it being kind of a weak follow-up, although has its entertainment points, actually
it's doing gangbusters right now.
It makes more fun of the woken ideology than it does in promoting it. At this point, like what I said on Chris Gore's channel the other day, a male and pale brings into the sale. So like, or makes a sale. So like, that's the thing. Like, people want to see that. And because the European market doesn't qualify this as an R-rated film, kids in Europe and China and stuff, they're going to see it.
Wow.
It's only in North America and I think Australia that's R-rated, or like the 17 and older crowd. So
that's
wild. It looks, if it has legs, we'll find out this weekend.
Yeah,
what type of legs those are. I don't think it'll hit 1 billion, but it definitely will cross 700. I think
it had a really smashing opening weekend. I'll definitely give it that. For anybody that's interested in Godzilla figures, I will recommend going with Haya. I'm not sponsored by Haya, but hey, Haya, hi, yeah. If you want to change that, I'd be happy to have a chat. Go with these instead of the SH Monster Arts.
Cut of that though, because it happened here.
That's fine.
All I need is like a code from like a website to sponsor us.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. You're the toy guy anyway. Go with the Haya toys instead of the SH Monster Arts. Even though SH Figure Arts are like really highly sought after for guys that like anime figures, their Godzilla figures are so much lower quality in terms of detail and accuracy to the actual design. And they're also like 3 to 4 times the price. For no good reason. Like I've seen
at that point.
I've seen side by sides of they're literally releasing all the same MonsterVerse characters as Haya toys, and I've yet to see a single one of them that looks half as good as the Haya toy, and it's still like twice the price, if not more. And I'm like, I don't know how they justify that.
Our friend Taylor Swift says also greater than Disney, Star Wars, and MCU, and Doctor Who says, but it's also Wolverine's 4th film, so that pits it against Thor 4. It's better than Thor 4. It's better than Thor 4. It's better than Frozen Empire. It's better than Batman and Robin. Yeah.
Hold on. What do you mean Wolverine's 4th film?
Oh, I guess they don't.
He's had 3 solo films, and this isn't a solo film. It's a duo film. His name's in the title, but then he's been in the vast majority of the X-Men films.
Yes,
he's not in Dark Phoenix, right? Isn't it the only one he's not in?
He's not in Dark Phoenix, and he's
Well, he was in Days of Future Past. He was
Yeah.
in Apocalypse for a cameo.
Yep.
The thing is,
Yeah.
the allegory that Deadpool and Wolverine has is that the moment Hugh Jackman left the franchise, the X-Men franchise was dying. And that's kind of what they're saying. And they end up being dead. And that's his grievance is that, he's the worst one because when he left, all the humans came and the X-Men are dead. And he's the only one left. And it's like, okay,
that completely went over my head when I watched. There's a ton
of allegories. Like Paradox is clearly Kevin Feige, and Nova, I think, is Bob Iger. Because he doesn't.
Now I want to rewatch this damn movie with that in mind.
No, there's some surface level allegory on there that I think it gets lost in the weeds when you're laughing at some of the jokes or getting distracted by some of the fight choreography and the fact that they're kind of restarting the movie with every new location they go to. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a cohesive plot from point A to point B, but there's stuff going on here. And
well, I'm curious to watch it. I do plan on seeing it. I need to find a free slot of time to go see it in IMAX while it's still in IMAX at my local theater.
So let me just clarify. I think I would rank I'd rank it above every movie on this except I know for sure TMNT 07 is a movie I like more than this movie.
Well, TMNT 07, wasn't that the CGI one?
Yeah,
that was the CGI one with freaking Patrick Stewart voicing Splinter.
Yeah, dude, I like
that movie. Was amazing.
No, Patrick Stewart wasn't Splinter. He was the bad guy.
Yeah.
Was?
Yeah.
I thought he was Splinter.
No, I can't remember. It was Mako. Mako was Splinter. Yeah.
You're right. You are totally right. I haven't seen that movie since like 2009. So
I saw it once back in the day and I went, wow, if I would have realized the Ninja Turtles was like this as a kid, I would have liked it way more because I kind of liked it when it was new.
Were you more of a Transformers kid than a Turtles kid?
Transformers wasn't really a thing around me. I was a Power Rangers kid.
Okay. All right. Like I liked Power Rangers. We're the same freaking age. Like I liked Power Rangers and I liked Ninja Turtles. It might have been my dad that got me into Ninja Turtles now that I think about it. Transformers, I wasn't a Transformers kid growing up.
I had an Optimus Prime.
It had like no presence.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, we grew up in this weird window of time because a lot of toy collector channels or friends of mine will want to talk to me about He-Man, G.I. Joe, and Transformers. And
all of those were like that ended a couple of years before we came into existence.
I think they all ended in like 1987. I thought they all were like, oh, man. And then the Ninja Turtles took off in 87. So we were born into this like post-Ninja Turtle world. And then all the stuff that was influenced by that to some degree, we grew up.
I was like 4 and 5 years old watching the cartoon.
Yeah,
is what I was doing. And I had the whole so I didn't have the whole like set. I didn't have Bebop and Rocksteady, and I didn't have the van, but I had all 4 of the brothers and I had Splinter. My rich friends across the street had everything else.
I had the Turtles as well. I can tell you how I got so many of the toys in the collection. And I mean, we can take it back 35 years. Almost. That's a little, that's extreme. Excuse me. Let's say 30 years for sure. My point is, I don't remember how I got the turtle figures. I just remember always having them, but never really playing with them. Like I would go through my toy box and it's like, oh, the Ninja Turtles. I'll play with Batman instead. I don't know what it was, but I love the 07 movie though. That's all I'll say about that.
That's fantastic.
Now, to our friend Damien King, thank you very much for your patience, my friend. I'm sorry it took this long to get to you. Lies, Robert Downey Jr. will save us all. Doom 2028. Love Iron Dad. Well,
I mean,
Damien King.
Look, I hope that what script was theorizing, postulating is actually what ends up happening. I would love to get to go to the theater and see RDJ as Iron Man again and just have an absolute blast, because that even if the movie itself is only mid, he's going to give a knockout performance.
He always does.
He's going to just knock it right out of the park.
Dude, his return is the best of all time, and he's always been a solid actor. Like, dare I say, always great, even in his younger days, back in the 80s doing...
Well, he was a character actor back then. Like, that's the thing. He's always been the character, the supporter. He was in one movie with Sybil Shepherd where he was like the lead, where he was playing a reincarnated version of her dead husband. not a very good movie, but he was fun in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Chaplin is kind of what got him on the board again. And then he became notorious for his drug abuse.
Yeah.
and then
But
when
then he had that renaissance, and he started having, even if they were smaller roles, fantastic performances. Like his role in he was solid in, what was it, Zodiac? He was solid in
Zodiac, Shaggy Dog,
Chef.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Chef was after his comeback.
Chef was well after his he was already into like what, Iron Man 2 or 3 at that point.
He had just finished Iron Man 2. Favreau was quote unquote fired by Disney from the MCU as a director and producer. Because he disagreed with the fact that they were going too family and against his Demon in the Bottle stuff, but he decided he'll be a team player and he'll do the movie. And then Disney still threw him under the bus. Ike Perlmutter kind of fought for him. Kevin Feige fought for him. Couldn't get the deal worked out. He then did Chef. Chef did amazingly well.
It was such a good, like, that's not the type of movie that I go to see. And I saw that movie and I was like, this is a really good freaking movie.
And it has a very good message about art and creativity in it.
Yeah.
And it did so well that
it almost felt like wasn't
sorry to him behind the
wasn't
scenes.
Favreau a writer on that as well?
Yes. So Jon Favreau actually started out as a comedy writer.
Yeah.
And then he worked on a bunch of shows. He worked on the Gary Shandling Show. He then made Swingers and made
Don't forget Replacements.
Yep, and the Replacements. He was in Rudy.
I freaking love that movie.
He was in Rudy. He was in Friends. Like he was working around and he was trying to find. He always wanted to be a director, and he was trying to get his foot in the door. And he had to force his way in because he had no family connections in Hollywood.
Right. He didn't have any of that nepotism working for him.
Exactly. And yeah, he managed to, he befriended Vince Vaughn. They had a good partnership that worked out really well until Vince did what he did. Nothing salacious. He just kind of decided to do a soft retire of sorts and do some more indie, smaller things.
Well, Favreau's the guy you can tell wants to tell good stories and wants to entertain people. Like, obviously, mileage varies with people when it comes to the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, but you can at least tell that the guy that was writing it and the guy that was in charge, like, was trying to have fun and wanted other people to have fun with him. Right? Yeah. You can see that moment with that stark contrast when you get into season 3 and it's clear, okay, Favreau is not really around right
now.
He
had his character that he played / voiced killed off at the end of that season. So Jon Favreau has actually a really great quality that's also his biggest flaw, in my opinion, and that is he's a very amicable team player. He believes in the art, he believes in the business, he believes in playing as a team, and he's willing to compromise and reconcile. But it also has been to his downfall because he doesn't push back enough to what he knows is right. And when he does, he's seen what happens. And basically, he's helped start the MCU. He thought he was a little bit untouchable, and he technically should have been. And the moment,
you kick off with Iron Man like that, yeah, you should have been.
And he's like, I want to do Demon in a Bottle. Disney comes in and says, well, we're the new owners of Marvel right now. We're not letting you. Paramount is like, well, we really wanted to see Demon in a Bottle. That's why we signed you to that movie. But then we sold the contract. I sold the contract to Disney. Yeah. Disney kind of has final say. There's your back and forth. And that's how he got to the situation. And I will say there's a timeline out there where Ike Perlmutter did not sell his contract that from Paramount to Disney, and the MCU was still fun and badass without any of this ideology stuff in there, because they would have leaned into the other stories that made Marvel great as opposed to rushing towards the current day stuff, because you have a different company. You have Marvel Studios essentially being independent still, but having their distribution contracts with Paramount, Universal, Fox, and to a lesser extent, Sony.
Yeah.
The only reason Fox doesn't exist anymore is because Disney bought Marvel, made a ton of money out there, used it as collateral, and was able to buy Fox.
Yeah. No, exactly.
And you can trace it all the way back to this one dumb decision where a guy's like, yeah, Disney, they're a smaller studio, but they'll front a whole bunch of money for it, and we'll just leave Paramount because why are we? Oh yeah, they just split up. So okay, that's a little stupid, but they're still not. They're able to negotiate really great deals with all these other studios, and nobody's upset. I mean, you have the best Hulk movie ever made by Universal.
Incredible Hulk is so it's so freaking
good. And I'm just like, yep. It all comes down to the fact that If Paramount didn't split themselves up, and if Ike didn't sell to Disney, the MCU would still have their 35 movies, but they'd probably all have been gaining $1 billion at the box office by the end of the day, making it the most popular franchise to have ever existed. It still is, but it's even more so, most popular and most revered franchise to have ever existed.
Okay, so that partially answers what my next question was going to be, because I was actually going to ask you this, because I'm super interested to hear your perspective on it, given the fact that you actually have working industry knowledge, because I'm of two different minds with this. Say Disney never wound up like bringing all of these different studios and stuff in terms of like licensing rights, and then Marvel as a whole under their own umbrella and becoming freaking Umbrella Corp. And we no longer have Fox over here making Marvel movies. We don't have Paramount over here and so forth. And then Sony still is doing kind of their own thing, but mixed results, mostly bad. Say that doesn't happen. Would we actually get the cohesion that we saw in those first 3 phases?
Yep.
Like, would they actually? That's a legitimate question, because would there be enough willingness to play ball and tell one overarching cohesive story with a through line for the whole thing between all the studios? Is that a thing that would actually happen?
Yes, because Marvel Studios is its own independent studio. All the other studios contributing to it are just distributors, and Disney technically is a distributor. They own Marvel but don't own Marvel. It's very complicated. Even some entertainment lawyers are looking at it as like, and these are some of the best.
Right,
ones
they
in the
do
world.
semi-operate independently, Marvel Studios.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
In fact, they have a little bit more autonomy compared to what Disney has control over with Star Wars.
Right.
So yes, it would be very cohesive because they would be Marvel films with different distribution deals. One of the things that actually was brilliant that Universal really appreciated was the fact that when they went over to say, we want to do a Hulk movie and we want it to be part of our MCU, they're just like, well, how does that reconcile with Paramount? And they said, well, Paramount actually has this. We made a deal with them, which is it's a hands-off type of thing. Like, there are movies. Well, the ones that we have contracts with them, they will distribute. The ones we want to make a contract with you for the Marvel characters you own that you will distribute, but we make the movie. So you get the money, but we make the movie. That was kind of the deal. And they were actually going over to Fox. They're negotiating X-Men and Fantastic Four at the time. Fox was a little hardball, but they were making headway. And then they'd already started with Sony, but what's her name? Crazy sandwich lady.
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, Amy Pascal.
Amy Pascal didn't want part of that. So they were like, well, the only way they're going to, they basically knew that they had to make some hits in order to get Sony to play ball.
I'll tell you what, they wouldn't have been able to tell the Spider-Man story that they did in the MCU with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, because he actually did an interview where he was like, there's no way, like, Spider-Man would never have acted that way with a character like Iron Man. They are two completely polar opposites. They might both be brilliant minds, but in terms of like where they come from, there's a difference between coming from two completely different perspectives and completely different ideal systems, completely different walks of life, and still being able to act amicably and work when it's necessary together. Right? You can do that. That's actually being freaking grown. That's called being an adult. Being able to work with, for the greater good, people that you might disagree with, right? Or come from a different place with. That's called being a freaking adult. However, the story that they were telling in the MCU with like him revering Iron Man and viewing him as kind of like a father figure and all this. Yeah, like that would not have flown. That would not have worked whatsoever.
No, because I think it's plausible to have Peter Parker respect Iron Man and like parts of him, but there would be
absolutely
a lot of friction with regards to methods and execution, right? Because Spider-Man has a far more stronger moral code, even though he's a lot dumber socially with regards to how to function with that. And Iron Man is more like, I just need to solve the problem quickly and snappy, quick, get on with it type of thing.
For the greater good, whatever's necessary, done.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff to to consider. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it would have been a far more cohesive thing, far more balanced.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the insight, because that was a genuine question born of ignorance to the industry at large, and not really knowing how all of those different moving parts would have worked. I'm curious to know now what that would have looked like in terms of an end product.
My imagination just runs wild with how cool it would have been. And I don't think we would have got the Infinity Saga so quickly, though. I think that would have been still down the road at this point. But,
yeah, it was definitely more of a paramilitary style, like technology-based stuff. It was interesting. It was a much more exciting time to be alive in terms of this type of entertainment, because it felt refreshed after a run of good enough movies to move on to something else.
They wanted to do a S.H.I.E.L.D. movie before Disney got in. Like, they were not going to get rid of S.H.I.E.L.D. the way that they did. I know that,
right?
Because I remember them talking about Nick Fury and how much they were like excited for it.
We know how, like, there was that period of time where, even though in the first 3 phases almost everything was at least solid, people had some legitimate criticisms of, like, some films started to feel kind of like cookie cutter, where it's like, oh, well, this is, Thor is just Iron Man, but with magic and gods instead of, technology, things like this. People would have, different little nitpicks and criticisms, not all of them unfounded entirely either. But when we had the different studios in charge of things, when we had Paramount, we had Fox, we had all this, each one of those brought their own tonality and their own feel to it. So they did feel completely different from each other. However, to your point, Script, I do think now, after you having graciously taken the time to answer my question, I think that we could have still gotten a cohesive Marvel universe with maybe films that had a little more diversity to them. And I don't mean diversity in the way that they're currently
Authentic
trying
diversity.
to push now. I'm talking like the films themselves felt more distinct from each other.
Yeah.
That kind of diversity.
Less homogenized. Absolutely. And you know what?
Yeah.
Speaking of homogenized with our conversation, I think Jeff wants us to get back to our wonderful audience and see what they're
Xavier
saying.
to God, thank you for your $5 super chat.
Yeah. So anyway, but
Sorry about that,
my reaction on Sunday when I found out Robert Downey Jr. will be Victor Von Doom. Then again, the rest of the Fantastic Four isn't accurate either. So yeah, I don't.
It's really Pedro. That's it.
It's going to be really weird, because we have to go back 60 years for that first generation of the Fantastic Four, because no one's nostalgic for it that's in our age range. It's like, oh, remember the Fantastic Four, how great they were? Not in our lifetimes. Like,
yeah, no, my dad liked the Fantastic Four.
It's like something that's kept on life support, because they, it's the guy that built the foundation. And you're like, well, you're a lifer, so we're going to give you the same respect, and we're going to put you in all the, family photos. You're, you helped us start everything. But it's like, everybody likes you, but nobody loves you. So it's like, oh, great, it's the Fantastic Four's time to shine. Oh, well, I don't really like those characters, because they're really defined by a couple really good runs. And then they're also just, I think they're incredibly dense and very hard to read and get into. I don't think the Fantastic Four is something you can give a modern day kid and they're going to go, wow, my mind is blown. They're going to be like, what's this lumpy orange thing? What's the commie? Like, it's really hard to get somebody into the Fantastic Four. That's why Spider-Man's the most popular at Marvel, and probably the most popular ever, like, currently, and has been for a while, and probably will be because of the global appeal. Like, Fantastic Four, Xavier to God, I think this is going to be the right direction, but I don't think this is going to be the be-all, end-all. That it's because you're trying to modernize it, you're trying to make it classic, but the people don't look like the characters. And then you got,
I think Vanessa Kirby's good looking enough to play Sue Storm. She's got a new stylist now, so they fixed the problem with her eyes, because her eye makeup before made her look kind of like Asian or flat faced, and then they actually gave her eyeshadow so you could see that she has eyes and they're pretty. Because if you take a look at her Mission Impossible,
I don't remember.
Her face is not that. They actually kind of uglified her, in my opinion, from there. But when she showed up at Comic-Con and she actually has eyeshadow on and you can see the contours of her face and shapely body, I'm like, wow, yeah, I can see her as a Sue Storm. Paige Pascal, though, no.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's such a ball drop.
It is, because I would have said, you know what, you should really have used, who actually has as a good looking actor and also has an authoritative voice, Anson Mount. You waste him with Black Bolt, but He looks just like the Alex Ross.
Yeah,
he does.
Fantastic. And
Does
he's
them
the right age.
all Alex Ross male characters
He's
without
also
masks on kind of
available.
look the same.
He's also available because him shooting Strange New Worlds is only really like an 8-week process up here. And then he's done for the rest of the year. So go get him. He's got the natural silver hair. So if you want, you can play around with a little dye job on the top and keep this natural white, at the sides. And he looks like a guy who could get someone like Sue Storm, not just from looks, but he has the authority where he knows how to say smart stuff and make you sound like you believe that he knows what he's saying. Smart stuff.
Pedro Pascal, the only thing he's ever talked scientifically speaking that made sense was when he was talking about being on drugs. I'm like, I believe that you knew how this stuff works, but he is he's got a cool voice for the Mandalorian, but
and he was fine on Game of Thrones. I thought he was really good in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, but that's not him leading that movie. That's Nick Cage doing that.
Yeah.
He was probably one of the more tolerable things in Wonder Woman 84.
Oh yeah, he was Maxwell Lord?
He was Maxwell Lord.
They've
never been able to cast him well, though. Like Maxwell Lord has been played like 3 different actors in various live action forms in film and television, and the
role that was written, he did a good job with. I won't knock him for that, but that wasn't Maxwell Lord.
No, and the other part too is he's not. It doesn't look like he's shaving that mustache. His facial hair is weak excuse for his facial hair, and I'm like, no, Reed Richards is a clean shaven, uptight dude.
Correct. Like if you see Reed Richards.
60s?
Yeah. And if you see Reed Richards with even just like a freaking 5 o'clock shadow, that means like that dude is like, he's working right
now. He's
now.
determined and he's focused.
Yeah, like he is all in, tunnel vision on something right now. That's something that should be used narratively, right? To convey the amount of work and time and dedication that he's dedicating to whatever the hell this thing is that he's doing, for him to not be clean shaven. I think that's incredibly important. And Pedro Pascal looks really weird without whatever that excuse for facial hair is that he has.
Yeah, we used to call that dirt when you were going through puberty in high school. It's like, get that dirt off your face.
Like the kind of patchy, like, oh, you got a couple hairs here, you got a couple hairs there.
Exactly. And
get rid of it, man.
The footage that they showed at Comic-Con, that's actually the test footage. They started principal photography yesterday. So this is like them actually doing the movie. So a lot of the stuff that we saw at Comic-Con, you're going to see reshoots of that for the final product, and it's going to look almost identical. Like I guarantee you that, because that's how good those guys are. That's how good film crews are. But they've got one heck of a challenge ahead of them. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, this is going to be very scrutinized, and I want it to work, but I really don't believe it will. This is the one that doesn't have a generation of people behind it that are going to be like, yeah.
And on top of that, the casting doesn't enthuse those of us who have maybe more of a predilection to want to be enthused about a Fantastic Four film.
We also got the Incredibles back in the day, and the Incredibles...
That's a better Fantastic Four film.
Yeah,
the Incredibles are great.
Yeah.
Moving on. We have our friend Xavier Degato, who says Robert Downey Jr.'s return won't be like Tobey Maguire or Jackman returning because he's only been gone a few years. And why can't they make more Iron Man movies that take place before Infinity War and other MCU movies? Simple. He's expensive. He's
not expensive anymore.
Is that contract over?
The contract's been long over since Endgame. The other part too is that because his other movies have not brought in box office numbers, his quote goes down. So Chris Evans, when he did his cameo for Deadpool and Wolverine, he's probably only got like $1 million, $1.5 million for that. It's like
I would love $1 million, $1.5 million for a cameo.
No, yeah, and Robert Downey Jr. I don't think his return would net him $20 million to come back. I think if anything, he's getting $20 million to do 3 movies, and that's most likely what it's going to be. Because even though his name associated with Marvel brand will definitely bank him a lot of money, and his agents and management team could definitely argue a lot for that. He
probably has some back end stuff where it's like, hey, if it makes X amount of dollars, then you're going to get X percentage or whatever.
Yeah, because when he
like Leo does,
his previous contract before he went was $50 million for 3 films plus back end deals. He's not getting that again here, but he'll probably get a similar back end deal. but he's probably getting a third of that at the most. I don't even think he's going to be getting that third because, again, like with Scarlett Johansson, like with Benedict Cumberbatch, all those guys, when they're not in the Marvel movies, they don't bring in the bucks. So guess what? That reduces your quote. So as long as you are not doing, so when you go back to Marvel movies, that means if RDJ decides, hey, if these Marvel movies start making money again with my name on it, and I want to do something else, I can ask for more money over there because I'm still part of the MCU. And if he leaves the MCU and he does something like a Dr. Doolittle, which bombed, well, guess what? That cuts your quote in half. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. And Disney will take advantage of that. They'll be like, listen, we know you. The only reason, the only money you make is from our movies, so we are going to pay you appropriately for that. And this is what the value is. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. You can go do whatever you want. We will go another way. Happy to do it. But if you do come back with us, and we really want you to come back with us, this is what you're going to get. And they're going to do the same thing with Chris Evans, because I'm guarantee you they're going to find a way to bring him back. And Chris Hemsworth, he's been the smartest one there because he's never asked for too much that Disney isn't willing to pay. But he's also done other films that have kind of brought in some decent amount of money. The only blemish on his record right now is the Furiosa movie.
Right. Which
did it do that poorly?
From what I heard,
it really
isn't
did.
even actually a bad movie.
It's not a bad movie.
It's just nobody really wanted it. And that's that balance, right? Where it's like you can make something that's really good on a technical and an objectives, measure, and you hit the right notes, you hit the right tones, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that understands storytelling would be like, that's a well told and executed film, right?
Yep.
But if your audience isn't interested,
it came in too late because here's the Furiosa. Was kind of delayed by Kevin Tsuchihara after Fury Road, because Fury Road did okay, but it was a real critical success, but not so much on the audience side of things. And then a deal was made, and after Kevin Tsuchihara was outed at Warner Brothers, the person that followed up, whose name is escaping right now, because I don't think it was Zen Sarnoff yet, someone else, didn't want to say no to George Miller, because you don't really want to say no to George Miller. He's a legend. They kind of dragged him out a little bit, and then I think with Ann Sarnoff, he got the deal, and they got the pre-sale rights to it, or they pre-sold it to the countries, and they started to work up in the production, but it kept on getting delayed because Ann Sarnoff was all trying to save the DC side of things. She gets outed when Warner Brothers merges with Discovery, and Zaslav is like, well, this movie's been in pre-production for X amount of years. It's already been paid, quote unquote, paid for, but not really. Get your ass in gear and let's get it out. And after that's been like 7 years. It was a 7-year journey. So it was never going to make its money back, but he wanted to honor the deal and get it out. And right. I think because of that, and also when they got Anna Taylor-Joy, who people are trying to push her as a star. I'm sorry. She's not. She just isn't. She has fetal alcohol syndrome. Her eyes are way too far apart for a model, for an actor. I'm sorry to body shame you like that, but it says no bearing on you. Have
Script's not holding back. Holy hell.
Well, but like she has no control over that, of course, but she is a good actor. But the thing is, she's not a lead, not in this type of movie. And Charlize Theron was a better choice. But again, 7 years too late. If they made this thing literally as the follow up to Fury Road, I think it would have done equal to Fury Road,
or at least something comparable. Right.
Yeah, and Miller would be doing something else. But right now,
and that's fair, because not every great actor is necessarily a lead actor. Right. It's different energies. Like you can be a fantastic actor, you nail basically any role you're put in, but you can't carry a film on your own.
I see in 5 years she'll be doing made-for-TV Hallmark style movies. Not for a lack of skill, just because the audience by and large is not going to. It has already rejected her, sadly.
Right, because right now there's kind of that push for her being.
Oh no, she'll be fine, man. She's Princess Peach. She'll just do voices.
Yeah, she'll do voices for
voice actors. Don't make a hell of a lot, but she could at least. I mean, as long as she doesn't try and live outside of her means, I'm sure she'd be fine.
Which is hard to do for an actor of her age. Like Sydney Sweeney right now is kind of spending a lot of money, but she's also marrying a producer that's pretty well off, so she should be okay for a while. Also, she's making the smart move where she's slowly phasing out of acting and she's getting into directing and producing. So,
okay.
Yeah, she's doing it early because she knows she'll get attention now. Whereas if she kind of hits that quote unquote wall, people won't be paying attention to it.
Do the smart thing where you get freaking roles in national ad campaigns, and then you get residuals for ever.
Well, a lot of TV actors I know have done that, and they've kind of stagnated. Like the one of the most famous ones that was on the rise, and this unfairly on the rise because she sucks. Although I do respect her because we do cross paths here. And there's Kristen Crook, so she's a Canadian actor.
Not Lana Lang, you mean?
Yeah, she's not very good, but she got into Neutrogena and a whole bunch of like beauty products to co-sponsor stuff to support her. And then she does a bunch of really low grade television shows.
She cheated on Scotty, so I don't like her.
Yeah.
That's
Scotty
fair.
got an upgrade. So
see,
That's true. Mika is much better looking.
Yep. And
she's not a particular. She's pretty.
Yeah,
I would never knock her looks, but she's
very charming.
And I believe that she's just not a particularly good actress.
No, and I think that has to do with the fact that she's a little bit too smart to be an actor.
Oh,
because this is something that Truman Capote has said. I think he said it on the Dick Cavett show, where he's like, he's talking about actors that he says are good and terrible, and he says the best actors are the dumbest ones, and the worst actors are the smartest ones, because the smartest ones know how stupid it is, the stuff they're saying, and they have an ego about them that can't sell it. But the dumb ones have no idea what the hell is going on, so they're able to commit a lot easier.
Interesting. I've never heard that perspective. That's quite.
And what's funny is that, yeah, in a lot of cases, I would say, the vast majority of your great actors are idiots, and they acknowledge that. I mean, Anthony Hopkins acknowledges that he's an idiot, but he knows the craft so well, and he understands why he's stupid. In that
holy
regard.
moly, the man is a master of his craft.
But that thing is like, yeah, I think that's why we love him. It's like he's a master of his craft, and he knows anything that's outside of acting, he's an idiot on, and he acknowledges that. He's like, that's why actors should just focus on acting. And I'm like, you know what?
Stop trying to comment on world events. Just act.
Same thing with Mel Gibson and Kurt Russell. They have the same philosophy. Tell me what my mark is, and tell me what my line is. If I hit my mark and I hit my line, I've done the best job. I've done the job I'm supposed to do, and they keep it that simple. And they know where they have their own opinions politically. They have their own stuff there, which you can argue, especially if you're on their side or not, that they're a little off in some areas. But regardless, they actually are. All their energy is devoted to the art form and the craft, and that's what makes them stand out. Then you take a look at someone like a Kristen Crook, who she reads tons of books. The last 5 times I bumped into her, she's had 3 books on her person that she's in the midst of reading. And it's like, I don't know many actors that read at that level, at that frequency. I know a lot of screenwriters that do. I know a couple of directors that do. I don't know many actors that do. They don't care. What the actors are usually doing is they're working really hard just trying to find another gig. They're not actually like looking in bookstores and grabbing novels and things on history and stuff and just wanting to feed their mind. So that explains why.
Well, I could respect her for that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I resent her being cast as Lana Lang.
Well, she had no choice over that. Like she was getting every job she could because she was.
Oh, sure.
I'm on Degrassi.
It's not it's not necessarily a knock against her particularly, though. Right. Her acting in the role is still not good.
Not only, I mean, it's also not well written. They had no idea what to do with her. Like, first thing, she's the girl that first season, she's the girl that that Clark lost for. Oh, second season, well, her boyfriend that was between them is not there anymore. So what are we going to do with her now? Well, we're going to make her open up a coffee shop. Oh, that's stupid. Oh, third season, she's now going to have this mysterious tattoo on her body and is going to be like possessed by a witch. It's like you're already running out of ideas, man. Like you have no clue what to do with this lady. Give me Tracy Heideck, who is in Superboy. She is gorgeous. She was a ginger Lana Lang, and
as Lana Lang ought to be.
As Lana Lang. I mean, she had a little Lois Lane about her because she was a journalist, but I'm like, that's not really Lana Lang, but whatever.
Thank you, Xavier to God.
You got your money out of that one.
I'll take a new Joe Rogan button and an Uncle Ben, please. Well, sure. Ask and you shall receive.
Did you see that guy accidentally hit that moose with his car?
No.
Holy shit. Jamie, pull that video up.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Well, sorry to be that guy. And then here's your other button request, right? I think it's down here. Where the hell is it? Sorry, I think it's here.
Who's that Pokemon? man.
That's rough, man.
R.I.P. to the Rice Master. It's funny, while you guys were talking, I was inking one of my sketches for today. I've been looking at a lot of Wolverine art, and I was like, I'm gonna draw something like Barry Windsor Smith. So I'll
Did you
post
draw
it to
Wolverine?
I did.
Oh, dude, can we see?
I'm gonna post it to my Instagram later. I'm still working on it.
You should post it on Twitter as well.
It's just like a chest and arm for now, but
Ooh,
I'm playing around with cross hatching. I've been looking at a lot of Jim Lee stuff, and I'm like, oh wait, I think I finally get how this works. So
I'm super curious to see how that would turn out, because you have a very distinct style. At least everything that I've seen from you, it has this like vibe of the kind of official Grand Theft Auto art style.
That's exactly what I was shooting for.
No, and that lands absolutely. It absolutely lands, but it also has something that kind of sets it apart, and I can't quite put my finger on it. But if you added something like a different type of shading to it to make it even more distinct, I'm super curious. As somebody who interacts with comic artists literally for my job, I love seeing people like evolve their styles in different ways and play around and see what they like best, as well as what they feel works best for their preference and their style. I'm like actually excited to see what you kind of like do to amalgamize everything.
Well, the thing is, what people have seen is like either the ladies on Instagram or the two books, which Stealing Solo was made on a, at a time where I was the best I knew what I was doing with everything. But now I spend all these years post that, even between like Wokebusters has to look a certain way because I started it a certain way. So I had to go, okay, well, Wokebusters has to follow these pages, because you can't say like, hey, on page 1 they look this, but on page 84 they look like that.
Unless you want to go back and redraw the whole bitch,
which
right?
I did not want to. Because come on, it already took me forever to do. So now it's done and ready to go. I was gonna I moved back. I was like, I have to finish this. This is my number one priority.
I'm excited to get it in my hands, brother.
I'm excited too. I reread the stuff to make sure I'm like, is this exactly what I want? And I was like, wait, I'm following my own story like I would a TV show. Okay, this works. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, when it comes to the art, like I know all kinds of different ways, but I don't normally implement them in like comic stuff per se, because either I've tried to balance doing a YouTube show or trying to do other things in life, and it's like, well, I can't draw 12 to 15 hours a day. I would love to, but making these videos and this other stuff is actually what a day job is. So when I can get these things to go, like Stealing Solo 2, I'm up in it in every way. I'm gonna probably go for maybe less pages but more detailed stuff. Well, it'll be a full story, don't worry. But yeah, I'll let you see it. I'll post it to Instagram. I keep looking at it because I'm like, I kind of like this, because I've been like I draw like constantly, even on this like little shit paper. Like when I'm sitting here, I'm just like doodling on crap.
Oh, dude, what the hell?
Oh yeah, this is just me playing around with 2 different types of pens and stuff, and I'm like, breaking down the forms of the head a little more, and I'm like, all right, that's making my shit look more realistic, and a couple other things, and I'm like, oh, okay, there we go. Because my whole point is how to take realism and break it down into something that's easily replicatable and looking unique and different. Like I still think Alex Toth is the high watermark for a lot of stuff. But yeah, folks, I will keep you free from the boring, pretentious art talk unless that's what you really want to hear. Because it's like the older veterans, it's like, well, I don't want to talk like that to them because they don't want to listen to that shit. But you guys don't know how the stuff works, so it's fun to share it with you guys.
I'll
do it about the stream,
but I'm just one man.
Well, I'll tell you more about what you want to know. Like, all you got to do is ask. Some of my free time is spent like watching David Finch art videos, and I'm just like, all right.
Ooh, Dave, you could definitely do worse than David Finch. David Finch,
he gives here's the thing. You may have his work that you love. He sits and draws everything for you and explains why you need to do certain things. And he'll even go into like detail, like, all right, this is how you do a wrinkle shape or a muscle shape. And I'm sitting here drawing stuff and I go, wait, that muscle shape I watched the video of. Yeah, that shit works. And so I think he's the best YouTube art tutorial guy. Yeah, he keeps that in his background.
Like, dude, New 52 Batman the Dark Knight franchise was kind of hit and miss. It wasn't anywhere near the quality of, at least storytelling wise, as Scott Snyder's Batman book, at least for the first few volumes.
Mhm.
But man, David Finch's art is just holy balls, man. Like, it's one of those books that I own it, and I specifically own even the hardcover because it's David Finch art, and I am first and foremost an art guy when it comes to comic books. I want a good
Me
story.
too.
Do not get me wrong. I want a good story. I don't want to read the thing and feel stupid afterwards and being like, I lost brain cells consuming this. Please stop and don't ever do it again.
There's a difference between a bad and stupid story and a simple story. Because I will go
Correct.
back and read a lot of
Correct.
classic comics, and I'm like, these are just very basic good versus evil, or these are parallels to a Bible story or something like that. And it's
100%.
and that works for me. I don't think any mainstream comic. Well, I don't consume anything that's like offensively stupid, like some Marvel stuff. But that's a topic.
This
for
is just bad.
Yes.
Okay.
It is just an
All-
art book. It's not a story.
Frank Miller's
you.
All-Star Batman and Robin is a bad book in terms of story. This is not cohesive. The characters are out of character. I don't recognize these characters. If somebody were to like read their lines, I could not even remotely guess who they were. However, it's Jim Lee art cover to cover.
I
and
bought
so
the-
it is a beautiful book.
Dude,
Despite being dog water in terms of story. That is the book that I go to when I say, look, I'm an art guy. I want a good story. There are some books that I own that are horrible stories, but great art. And I own them because they have the great art. And Jim Lee is one of the all-time greats.
He is.
I would far rather reread, in terms of story, I would far rather reread Hush.
Yeah, dude. Same here. You're basically reiterating my points.
We grew up in the same era. We have very similar tastes.
Ooh, we got a Jim Aparo fan in the chat. I'm a Jim Aparo fan too.
Let's do it.
Jim Aparo work is great. I mean, obviously his Batman stuff is what everybody knows, really, but he's in my top, maybe top 4. I'm just gonna say 5 in case I'm forgetting somebody in terms of Batman artists, because like I will put Jim Lee and Neil Adams, and I'll give Bruce Timm the nod. But then Jim Aparo, he is my number 4. Like, I like Jim Aparo that much. Then I'd say like David Mazzucchelli. I do like Frank Miller's Batman, except, well, okay, I like the first one.
I don't like Frank Miller's art, just period.
But hold on, there are two eras of it, and there's the traditional Marvel stuff.
I don't like his art in Dark Knight Returns.
No, I mean, like, go back to his Marvel stuff from the late 70s. He doesn't draw like that. He draws like in his Wolverine stuff. Like, you've seen that famous picture of Wolverine doing that's on everything.
Yeah.
That's Frank Miller. So, I mean, he does have that style that everybody expects.
But his sequentials in most of the stuff that he's known for story-wise, I guess, is what I'm more honing in on. And yeah, I don't like his stuff in... There are a lot of Batman fans that would call sacrilege on me for this because I don't like Dark Knight Returns in terms of art. I don't like Long Halloween in terms of art.
That's fine.
Like those are, and I understand because art is to a degree, it's subjective, right? Like everybody has different things that's like they prefer this style. I know plenty of people, and I'm sure you do too, Jeff, who they hate the 90s style of art, not 90s style of storytelling. They hate 90s style of art where it's super flashy, right? And, you know, all the chicks are freaking.
No, I like that.
They got racks on racks, and the dudes are all jacked on jacked, right? And so like it's everything is taken up to 12 out of 10 in terms of visuals, right?
We only go to 11 on this channel, sir. Why not make 10 louder? Because this goes to 11. So I love that movie. I'm with you, and I don't like that overly bombastic art because I like the actual sequential storytelling. And so in the 90s, after that Image bubble popped and it kind of, you know, comic books shrunk again, you had a lot of interesting guys that were making their name in comics and really kind of bringing back either an older style. You could call it simplistic, but don't take it away from the quality of the work. It just, it doesn't require 50 lines in this direction and 50 lines in that direction tapered to create the illusion of a rib cage. They do a solid black fill with some feathered lines to make it look like a shape, like they used to do. But
I can understand that. I think 90s art is hit and miss because you had guys, like you had a few guys that were pretty consistent, right? You had your Jim Lees, you had your J. Scott Campbells, you had your Silvestris, you had your Michael Turner. Towards the latter, he was really end of the 90s. He was really getting going 98, 99. But then like everybody else just about in the 90s, then all of a sudden you had super inconsistent art. You had stuff that was like, okay, I can appreciate going, the 12 out of 10 in terms of shape with characters, but there's a point where you reach where then it's all of a sudden it's like 90s Rob Liefeld and other guys that were similar to that. And it's like, now it's not flashy to me. Now it just looks dumb. Right. And that's where my line is.
I always try to be kind when I talk about Rob Liefeld stuff, because that is a bucket list guest to get on the channel. I know people have opinions on stuff, but
I have a lot of respect for the guy, for sure. However, some of his work in the 90s, it's not for me.
But here's the thing. There aren't a lot of people that I find interesting that could have a 1960s and 70s and 80s Marvel discussion. I'd be like, hey, Rob, let's just start at the beginning. What were your, we'll go back decade by decade. And like, I can sit and rattle off the artists and the inkers and all this crap. And I'm just like trying to find somebody that likes that part of it as much as I do.
And to Clone Geek's point in the chat, Rob Liefeld got better as an artist over time. He absolutely did. Like I specifically bought a variant cover of a miniseries that's going on right now, which is Deadpool and Wolverine. That was literally, obviously, was spawned to piggyback off of the film that they were hoping was going to be a success, and clearly it has been so far. There's a Liefeld cover, and you look at the cover and you're like, that's solid work. Like, it's not the most amazing thing I've ever seen. That's a really high bar, but it's like you look at that and it's like, that's a good cover. Like that's good work. Like, that's Liefeld. He's putting in work, and he put out good work. It's not like he's a bad artist. Certainly not now, that's for sure. And I would love to chit chat with the guy. I'm willing to pick the brain. Dude, so back in 2018 or 2019, I met Brian Michael Bendis, and I chatted with him for several minutes. And he had just at the time, he had just come off of his Man of Steel run over at DC. He was about to start his Superman run, which wound up being abysmal, and he destroyed the Superman family. And he had just started his Young Justice run, and that destroyed Young Justice eventually after like the second issue. But he was a nice guy, and I enjoyed picking his brain, because I think there's always something that can be learned and gleaned from people who have actual experience.
When you're talking about somebody that's at that level, I mean, a lot of his books have sucked for the last decade plus, but I mean, he's also one of those names of the modern era where it's like, oh, okay, it's hard to, act like he's irrelevant. I don't like his work.
Well, he did also have some good work. Like, he had some legitimately good Avengers work. I wasn't a big Ultimate Spider-Man guy.
I own every issue. I've read almost all of them.
I read the first couple of volumes, and I was like, this is
Ultimate Spider-Man is like when I need something, when I'm like, I read all the Amazing Spider-Man. Well, there's Ultimate Spider-Man. Let's look at that one. It's like, and I'm not trying to sound like an old school purist, but I would rather go through like Spectacular.
Sure. No, and I'm the same way.
Those other spin-off titles, and then I'm like, I guess I'll go to Ultimate, because it's like Edgelord the comic book, but it's like also kid appropriate. They try to make it very early 2000s-y, and even back then I'm like,
they were trying to bring in like a young teenage audience, is what they were trying to do.
But
like
I was a young teenage audience. I wanted to read about Spider-Man, the man who had a wife, and Aunt May. Like, that's the shit I'm into. Like, even as a kid, I was,
You're preaching to the converted, man. I'm right there with you.
Here, we got some more super chats rolling, and
let's do it.
Audience to love. Head Case Laboratory asks, Jeff, have you checked out that story I sent you? I'm sorry, I haven't. I have had these creative impulses ever since Wokebusters closed. And so it's like I'm gearing up for Stealing Solo 2. I mean, that's what I mean. These are just like I said, these are like really just rough pen drawings and random crap when I'm on calls or streams. But I am gearing up for that. Sharpening the writing, doing a couple creative exercises, and I already wrote the outline. So it's basically a book in production now. But I'm not doing anything. I'll have a sign up later. But what I want to get at is I will read your story and I will get back with you, man. I apologize for making you wait, but thank you for reminding me. Robert Downey Jr. was an Oppenheimer, says Taylor Swift greater than Disney MCU and Doctor Who, which means he's part of the Barbenheimer phenomena. Can he spin, say, exaggerate the truth into getting more money? LOL. Well, Script will be back in a minute, Taylor Swift, and I will re-ask that question when he returns.
Yeah, that's a legitimately good question, I think, for Script when he gets back.
Cleaver to God says, rate these Marvel villains from least to greatest. Green Goblin, Doctor Doom, Thanos, Galactus, Ultron, Dormammu, Apocalypse, Magneto, Venom, and Ironmonger.
What are we using as the, and I guess either Xavier to God can chat this separately in the chat, or we can kind of hash it out here. What are we using as the measure for what makes a great villain? Are we talking about what makes them notorious and like they're infamous? We know them, be like anybody knows who that villain is.
Well, I think it's got to be that, because we're talking more broad. We don't need to get to too much of the minutiae. Okay. It's more of like, you know, like for me, Ironmonger's on the bottom because Ironmonger sucks. Like he's in the Iron Man movie. Isn't he a creation for the movie?
Yeah.
Is he as a character?
No.
Like, I know Obadiah Stane's a thing, but like I didn't
think he was already present, but he was super minor comparatively to anything else. I might be wrong on that, and I'm fully willing to admit that and willing to be proven wrong. However, I'm in agreement with you in that I would put him at the bottom for sure.
So I'll go Ironmonger, then Dormammu, then Ultron. Then I'll go Apocalypse. Then after Apocalypse, I will go Thanos, Galactus, the Green Goblin, and then Doctor Doom at the top. Because it's like, I know people are thinking like, oh man, Doctor Doom's back in the press. It's hot. It's like, no, Doctor Doom is actually the Marvel villain of villains and was for decades until the 90s when the X-Men took over in terms of popularity. Like Doctor Doom was in the Hostess ads. He appeared on everybody's cartoon. Like Doctor Doom was the Spider-Man equivalent for the bad guys.
I don't know how much I disagree with that list. I think through a modern lens, not the modern lens that Hollywood likes us to try and look through. So bottom to top, Ironmonger, Dormammu. I definitely agree with those two being the bottom two first. So if we're going strictly with like notoriety, in terms of like their infamy, in terms of like people actually knowing who these characters are and how big of a deal they are, I would probably then go Venom, and that's not out of a popularity thing. That's out of he hasn't been truly viewed as a villain in a really long time. I
forgot to say Venom. Oops.
He's been presented more as an anti-hero than anything for like the last 2 decades. I haven't thought of Venom as a villain in a really long time. After Venom, I'd probably go Ultron, and then Galactus, because nothing good's been done with him in a really long time, followed by Magneto, because he hasn't been black and white viewed as a villain in a really long time either. And then I followed up with probably Apocalypse, Doctor Doom, Thanos, Green Goblin. So that's bottom to top listing.
Script, are you back yet?
Yeah, I'm back. I was away for a phone call, but I am.
We've got a great question for you.
Okay.
So Taylor Swift in the chat said RDJ was an Oppenheimer, which means he's part of the Barbenheimer phenomena. Can he spin/exaggerate the truth into getting more money?
Nope.
Okay.
That's Christopher Nolan. That's Cillian Murphy. That's a massive ensemble cast. His agents would definitely try, 100%, but I don't think they did. Because here's the other part too. It went up against Barbie. Barbie kind of still smoked Oppenheimer, and Oppenheimer took a long time to get up to its final box office, where Barbie peaked really quick and then maintained. Don't get me wrong. He got nominated for an Oscar for that, which definitely helps, but it doesn't get him to the quote he had prior to leaving MCU. So I still think he's in the $10 to $15 million range per movie, maybe a little less at this point. And I only say that just because I've seen rises and falls with regards to actors happen quite dramatically. Like Gerald Butler was a $10 million per picture actor. And then I think now, and he's almost considered forgotten now, the best he can get is like 2.5. So I would say on the metric of things, Robert Downey Jr. is maybe 4 or 5 times more than Gerard Butler at peak, given with Oppenheimer. So he's probably able to do 25, maybe, or sorry, 15 to 25, maybe at that. And even then, that's kind of a stretch because Disney's not going to want to pay that anymore. Disney's already starting to roll back on its spending on talent.
I completely forgot about Gerard Butler being as popular as he was, man.
And he was popular. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, dude. After 300, he was everywhere. That movie Gamer was a big deal for a minute.
Yep. And remember when Hugh Jackman was not doing a Fox X-Men film, the other movies he was doing was pretty lousy. Like he was in that computer animated cartoon film that he did the voiceover for, like Washed Away or Flushed Away or something like that. That didn't do well. He was in the robot boxer film. That didn't do well.
I did like Swordfish.
Swordfish was a low budget film, so that actually worked out better. And also had John Travolta, Halle Berry, so he had a bigger star power combination towards it.
Don't forget Don Cheadle.
And well, Don Cheadle, he's never been a movie star, but great actor. I mean, I like him a lot as an actor. He's really good.
You're telling me that Hotel Rwanda wasn't a game changer?
Yes. I am not going to lie to you about that.
Good, because I wouldn't have you back on if you were telling me it was so impactful and changed cinema. I'd be like, come on, man.
I mean, you know what's sad is that I've saw that movie 2 times. I still can't remember it.
We watched it in high school because we had to learn about the Rwandan genocide. And
that's a terrible movie to watch to learn about the Rwandan genocide.
I was high school, man. Come on, like.
You know what? I've heard these stories where they had high school teachers to show movies of their subjects that they're supposed to be teaching each semester to try and get kids excited. And I'm like, I didn't really have that. The closest we had was watching the original Gladiator, but only to highlight all the inaccuracies in it and why history is important. It was more like, but that's different. I mean, again, we were educated with 5 years apart and also in different countries, so definitely different curriculum there.
Excuse me. Opinionated Junkie says Blade was New Line, not Fox.
Yes, technically Blade is Warner Brothers because New Line was purchased by Warner Brothers at that time.
I'm gonna go get some water. Hold on. You guys talk about Blade for a second.
Well, Blade started off okay, and then David S. Goyer got involved and killed that, as he does most things. And Andrew, you're a little muted.
I just realized that when I looked up and saw the red light around my mic instead of the white one. The first Blade was great. Then it was just kind of, it went downhill from there, unfortunately. However, it might, depending on how this next film, if it ever actually comes out, turns out, it might be a matter of us looking back on Blade Trinity and being like, well, it's bad, but at least it's not that.
That's a horrible thing for a film.
I hate that. I hate that measure.
Yeah, really, because it's a bad one. It's basically the only way the movie is good is because there's other movies that are worse than it. It's like
that drives me nuts.
The film, there's already tens of thousands of movies worse than the worst one you've seen.
No, absolutely. I was having this conversation about a video game franchise with a couple of friends of mine earlier in my Discord channel this afternoon, and it was about a franchise that I absolutely adore. I've been following since the PlayStation 1. And the most recent entry just had its 2nd year anniversary. And it was a great game, but its ending didn't quite stick the landing. Like, it was one of those things where it was part of a trilogy, and the end to it was supposed to feel like a culmination of the first 2. And I felt like they missed the mark. There were a lot of things that were just left way too open or just ignored entirely. And it was like, look, I liked the game on the whole, but they missed the mark in terms of sticking the landing for the ending. And that's important. And I had people saying, well, at least it wasn't as bad as, what Square did with like Kingdom Hearts 3 or what this developer did with this. And I was like, oh, no. Just because something else was worse on the whole doesn't mean that this thing gets excluded from doing a bad job on something. Like that's not how this should work. I reject the fanboyism mentality of just because I love something, and this is a franchise it's my top 3 JRPG franchises of all time, probably number 1. And just because I love something doesn't mean I can't be critical of it, right? It's important to maintain intellectual honesty in both criticizing that which we love, as well as being willing to give accolades to that which we normally would have an issue with, right? Like, say Disney comes out with a Star Wars project that, like, hey, we hate Disney. We hate what Disney's done with Star Wars for the last several years, but they come out with something that's actually on paper and in execution. It's a banger. If you don't give credit where credit's due, you look like a jackass. And I'm not willing to do that.
Opinionated
Any more than I already do for myself.
Edward Norton or Mark Ruffalo as actors? Well,
Ed Norton.
Ed
Come
Norton
on.
like a mile and forever.
Ed Norton's a different level of crazy, but he's a far better actor. Mark Ruffalo, he's kind of flat.
Compare a Supernova to Wonder Bread.
Well, like, the only thing is, like, he's only if you get him in a very kooky movie does he actually bring it forth. Like, I saw him in Poor Things, which is a really heady movie, but he gets tortured in that film, like psychologically and a little bit physically. And it's actually really fun to watch because he hams it up properly. It's the appropriate performance to give for that type of role.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't do movies that are like that. Sometimes he's a little bit too docile, too flat. Some of my friends call him Mark Ruffles. Because he's as versatile as a bag of Ruffles potato chips.
Yeah, but Ruffles have ridges. They have like valleys and peaks and stuff. Mark Ruffalo's he's just Wonder Bread.
A wafer cracker. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't insult Nilla wafers like that. I don't even know what to call him. He's nothing. He's so bland. Stick with like mediocre rom-coms, bro. Like
13 going on 30.
Seriously, I'm not even joking. Like, his acting range is like this. Whereas you have somebody like Edward Norton, and this isn't even counting Incredible Hulk, which I'm pretty sure all of us here are in agreement that we quite enjoy. Just as an actor, Edward Norton is phenomenal. He has such a range.
History X and Fight Club.
God. Yeah. The dude can play a villain. He can play a side character. He can play the main lead. He can do just about. I've yet to see him in a role where it's like, wow, he really botched that. He can't. We have found his weakness where he cannot play that type of role. At least I have.
The Smoochie is brilliant.
Like, I haven't seen that. Maybe it exists. I'm willing to be proven that, but
it does. It has Robin Williams in it.
Yeah. Dude, no, like, Death to Smoochie is peak Edward Norton because he plays against a lot of his other types.
Yeah.
And a lot of fun. But then there's also that criminal one where he pretends to be mentally challenged and fools everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Not Cape Fear. It's the other one. Primal Fear.
Primal Fear, yeah. Cape Fear is Robert De Niro. That's a remake, but yeah, Robert De Niro. Yeah.
Aren't they remaking that again?
Yeah, they do one every couple decades.
Yeah, it's exactly what we need, a remake of remakes.
Well, the Opinionated Junkie has
stop remaking good movies, remake the bad movies. That's why you have the remake.
Right? Why try and fix what isn't broken? How about you try and make something better that maybe missed the mark and had potential, right?
Yeah.
Opinionated junkie. I like his comment though here, though I want to tweak it.
I can't wait for a non-MCU Hulk. I want monsters back.
See, what I would like, and this would be one of those rare instances where, because I don't like the idea of recasting as much as it can be avoided, at least within something that's supposed to be the same continuity. But if I could trade Mark Ruffalo and get Edward Norton back and get a legitimate follow-up Hulk film, I'd be over the moon. I'm not even a Hulk guy, but the guy's a phenomenal actor. Incredible Hulk was a great story, even if like the villain was maybe kind of cookie cutter. Okay, the villain wasn't the deepest villain in the world. Abomination. Yeah, Abomination. Like he was never meant to be the deepest villain to begin with.
No, you need
so
the leader.
It was. Yeah, he was fine, right? He was like, okay, it was serviceable. It did the job. The actor, at least, he's fantastic. I always forget it. Yeah. I always forget his name. But everything else about the movie was just so well done. There was so much more depth to character added there. And if we could get that back, because right now the MCU is lacking for those bigger name characters right now. Because here's the thing, and this is why it's so important to not undersell the importance of maintaining your dedicated audience, as well as making sure that you're playing to your strengths with regards to your general audience. So your general audience doesn't know who the hell Captain Marvel is. You got lucky with that movie. Your general audience doesn't know who current Miss Marvel is. Your general audience doesn't know who the Eternals are. Your general audience doesn't know who Ironheart is. You aren't going to be able to bank off of just hype alone with these characters. You need to maintain recognizable characters, because it's really only those of us who are well-read comic book fans who know who those other characters are. And we know that they're actually pretty worthless for the most part. So you need to have an active presence with the Hulk. You need to have an active presence with somebody like Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Spidey, these characters that you built and endeared a general, otherwise non-geek audience towards. The vast majority of the people who wound up eventually getting buy-in to the MCU were the same people that were making fun of me up through high school for being a comic book fan. I was a geek. I was a dweeb. I was a dork for liking these things, right? But you managed, to your great credit, with the first three phases of the MCU, to endear a general, very widespread audience to these characters, to these stories. And you did a fantastic job, to your credit, with that. However, you got a big head about yourself and you decided to push characters nobody gave a crap about and nobody had ever heard of. Because even people who were not geeks that made fun of geeks knew who Superman was, knew who Spider-Man was, knew who Batman was. And so they could at least pretend to get on board and then eventually maybe organically get invested. But you don't have that with these other characters. So you want to actually have a strong presence with these characters that people do know, that normies know. That's important with a medium like movies. Movies are a normie medium. The box office, if you're talking about a blockbuster, that is a normie medium, because there just aren't enough of us legitimate, deep comic book fans to count towards making something a blockbuster hit on our own.
No,
there aren't. There really aren't. And all of us here are well-read comic book geeks. We can admit that. We make up a very small, though an important, still a small percentage of that audience for those films. You want to certainly please us as well, but you need to present it in a way that brings in that general audience. And that's how you make it a blockbuster, a successful one, instead of losing hundreds of millions of dollars. So you really need to have movies that involve these bigger name characters that normies have become familiar with over the last decade plus. Characters like Hulk, characters like Thor, and all of those. You need to actually put them back out the forefront. Look, throw away. I don't care what the hell your plan was for Ironheart. I don't care what the hell your plan is for Stretchy Hands McGee, Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. I don't care about any of them. And I promise you, just about nobody else out there does either. Get a good Hulk film in there. Get a good Thor film in there. And honestly, you probably have almost the least goodwill possible with that right now, because even the actor himself regrets the last Thor film. I have a feeling
dog shit.
it absolutely was. I have a feeling Chris Hemsworth regrets Thor 4 more than RDJ regrets Thor 3 or Iron Man 3.
Oh yeah,
That's
well
more-
RDJ wanted Iron Man 3 to be that way. He's quite happy with it because he's the one that got Shane Black to write, co-write and direct Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
So yes, with Chris Hemsworth, he's lucky because he was in a position where he could say, yeah, we missed the mark on Thor 4, and
I knew what you meant.
and he's not wrong because Taika Waititi
not.
decided to have more fun making the movie than making a fun movie, and you
Yeah,
squandered.
there was nothing fun about the film, and it on top of that wasn't good. You can
well, you
have
squandered a potentially great villain, and he didn't do anything with the concept. So you betrayed the very thing that you did. Now, oddly enough, he's doing Time Bandits, and I've seen the first 2 episodes, and I will say this: he's not ruining Time Bandits.
Okay. Well, sometimes people are suited for one thing, but not others.
Right.
Like you can, and to what you just said before, they failed to make a fun film and it wasn't good. Like sometimes you can make a film that isn't good, but it's still fun enough for your audience that it winds up being successful and enough people enjoy it where they're like, maybe it's not the best thing in the world, but I had a good time, right? Like I had a laugh. I went and saw it with friends or went and saw it with family, or it's a good time to just kind of like throw back some popcorn, have a drink. And I don't regret spending any of my time on this thing. However, if it's both not fun and not good, I can't help you. Right? Like you didn't even try. Like it feels like you actively tried to shoot yourself in the foot at that point.
Xavier DeGaunt, thank you. We get Red Hulk and Captain Falcon movie before our Hulk movie. Isn't that just incredible? I wonder what's next. Nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason we got the Red Hulk first is because I don't think Universal has the rights to all the other Hulk characters, just the Hulk. And I think that's why, because there's something. Oh God, I wish I could see the contract, but Universal still owns the Hulk, and they essentially rent that character out to be in movies, MCU movies, but there's a stipulation they cannot be in Disney MC title characters as Disney MCU movies because Universal has to be the distributor.
Don't you have to yourself like put out a product of said IP once every X amount of years in order to maintain the license?
Depending on the terms of the licensing, that depends on the term of the licensing contract. So here's the thing: if the property you have is making your studio money, you are able to use that to retain licensing rights. So even though Universal hasn't made their own sequel to The Incredible Hulk, because they are also essentially leasing out their licensing rights for the Hulk under the stipulation saying that, again, you can use the character, but you cannot do an Incredible Hulk movie. You can use him in Avengers. You can use him in Ant-Man movie if you want. You could use him in She-Hulk. You can use him in Spider-Man, whatever. You just cannot make a Hulk movie. But if you do, we, Universal, have to be the distributor of it. And Disney is saying, fine, we'll pay you a nominal fee to allow us to use the character, and we promise not to make an Incredible Hulk movie. But because we own Marvel, we're just not going to have them make an Incredible Hulk movie. So we're just going to put you into a bind there. And it's usually, I think it's supposed to be a power struggle where Disney is trying to basically say, we are going to find a way to get those rights away from you some way, somehow, if we can. And we'll do it if we have to bleed you out. And we'll also do it if we end up having to not make a Hulk character movie ever again. And if they do, Universal is just going to make their own Hulk movie, which people get confused about. And if it makes money, they're going to keep making them. And if it doesn't make money, well, they'll just renew the rights to basically keep Disney at bay from ever getting their holds of it.
That's so frustrating and stupid.
Well,
honestly.
that's just the mistake what Marvel made in the early 90s when they were desperate for money. They just sold their character rights to any studio that was willing to buy them.
Right.
And
It's so frustrating.
Disney is
because-
now the one company, sadly enough, that's trying to get all the rights back. The only ones they don't have are, I think, Spider-Man.
but
and the
they're
Hulk.
not qualified to have them. Is the problem. And that's the frustrating part, because there are characters where it's like the Hulk, even though I've never been the biggest Hulk fan in the world, not even remotely, but is a notable enough character to where he should have his own solo film at this point. When did Incredible Hulk come out? 2009?
2008. Yeah, it was
2008.
paired, and that's
I
the
was
thing.
only a year out of high school at that point.
Yep.
That
Well,
feels
that's the
like
thing.
forever ago.
That's why when Marvel wasn't acquired, when Marvel Studios was not pretty much pulled into Disney, they had those sweetheart deals with all those other studios, which means Universal would have been making other Incredible Hulk sequels, and they would have figured out a way to do Spider-Man stuff if Sony saw the dollars, at the box office. And Fox probably would have said, you know what? Yeah, let's actually reset our X-Men and Fantastic Four franchises under the MCU banner and do it all up, because there was no conflict there.
Yeah.
But Disney stepped in and did what they did.
That's so frustrating, because there were gems
They
in
spent
all of
$4
these other
billion on Marvel
studios.
and then 75 on Fox, so they have an $82 billion debt to get all those characters, and they'll never pay that off.
$82 billion. They have not made that back.
Yeah, and then that's not including the stuff they spent on Star Wars plus what they've lost on it. So yeah, they're as powerful as they were at the peak with their box office run and their reputation in Hollywood, they are very leveraged on the studio side of things. On the property side of things, they're fine, technically speaking, and they'll be chipping away at that debt for a while. But
that's hysterical that you bring that up, because I spend all this time, and not just me, a lot of people, all of us here really have spent time talking about how Star Wars is a brand. Not just there was the whole meme in this corner of the internet that Solo lost money. No, Star Wars as a whole has lost money in terms of what Disney paid out for it and what that return on investment has been. It lost money. They have not made that back based on what they have put into on the movies, the Disney Plus series, all of that. However, I didn't even begin to think or conceive what that also looked like when it came to acquiring Fox, acquiring Marvel as a whole, all of that, because the comic books aren't making money on net. And if they are, it's a pittance. It's next to nothing. So the amount of money that Disney has made on net from these acquisitions
is still zero.
Yeah. It's nothing. They haven't made anything.
Right.
You're talking 80 plus billion in debt. There is no version of the universe where they made all of that back in the last, whatever,
correct
15,
in fact,
20 years.
Even if they were to make another 60 Marvel movies that made $1 billion, they still would not have paid off that debt.
No, exactly, because usually that doesn't take into account marketing. That doesn't take into account what goes to the theaters,
the interest,
like all of that stuff. People constantly, whether it's this side of the internet or the other, they ignore like that. They just see a number and take that at face value, and they don't take into account everything else that actually is involved with that number. That's the interest, and that's the marketing fees that aren't usually accounted in the budget. That's so many other variables.
The other thing you also have to realize is that this is actually the one gimmick, the one fate of Disney that can allow Marvel to pull a Haim Saban and just buy themselves out. Mm-hmm. And they would walk away with the rights that Disney is stuck with the debt to. Because again, Marvel is not as integrated into Disney brand as Star Wars is.
Right, because they're a little more self-sufficient.
Exactly. So all they have to do is basically say, hey, Marvel Studios has their own accounting. They have their own finances that are slightly separate than Disney, but they are related. So all Marvel has to do is just wait for Disney to be very weak and be like, hey, you know what? We want to buy ourselves back. And we want to start making distribution deals with other studios. And because you bought us the rights to the Marvel characters, we own them under our brand. They have actually allocated them under Marvel. They're not technically owned by Disney, but Disney, has control to a degree with them.
Right,
All they have to
Disney's
do
the
is just
parent company to Marvel Studios and Marvel in general in terms of Marvel publishing, but
yeah,
the character licensing themselves and the ownership, as I understand, is still strictly under Marvel.
it's strictly under Marvel. All the other
Yeah.
characters that were acquired with the Fox brand are now under Disney. So there's a separation. So they've had to sort them all out. So you have like the Alien franchise, Star Wars stuff that was under Fox. All those rights, those are pulled into Disney coffers. And then the Marvel stuff is like, well, we'll put that over to Marvel Studios because they're the ones that are going to be overseeing that, because they're the ones that know what those characters are and they know how to market and all the stuff. So you've divvied up the character rights, the IPs across your subsidiary studios and your subsidiary agencies. So Marvel has those controls now under the auspices of Disney. But all Marvel can do one day is, if Disney's very weak and they're desperate for cash, Marvel can say, you know what? Our brand is still relatively strong, or at least is strong enough. We're just going to buy ourselves out like Haim Sabine bought Power Rangers back when Disney killed that. And we're just going to make some deals with some other studios for distribution, because we know that they're going to want us. Even if our last 10 movies bombed, any other studio will still be happy to distribute our stuff, because they know there's some sort of credence to a guaranteed audience there. It may be small, but it's enough for them to build back on. Just like with Star Wars right now. Star Wars has a very small audience, generally speaking, but it's enough for them to say, you know what, if we do release a Star Wars movie and it's good, that small audience is going to tell other people, and it's going to make waves, and it will slowly climb back. It won't be immediate, and it'll take some time. And if we make another one afterwards that works as well, that audience that came back, in addition to the ones that were always going to be there, well, now we've just doubled our audience. That's going to start spreading the word again, and it's just going to keep on growing.
That's how you build yourself out of the apathy via word of mouth. That like, hey, Star Wars is actually putting out good content again, and the word of mouth is incredibly important for marketing,
and I think
more so than anything else.
Oh, it is, and that's probably what the strategy is going to be for Marvel after Brave New World and Thunderbolts fails. Because
there's no version of the universe where Brave New World is a success. That's not It's not doing well.
So what we're going to see is, like, they have to make Fantastic Four good, and if it's good, they will show up for the Avengers Doomsday, and if that's really good, they'll show up for Avengers Secret War.
Yeah,
and the other part too, something to pay note of, and I'm starting to get confirmation of this as well. Disney did not have a huge slate of movies to sell on the foreign market, pre-sales on the foreign market when they were at Cannes this past year. So the fact that we only got announced up to Avengers Secret War and no official Phase 6 and the huge timeline that they normally do, says that they're basically betting that this trilogy of films with regards to the Fantastic Four is their Hail Mary to see, can we actually get back on footing? And if we can, we're doing X-Men. And if we are able to do that, we then have 3 Paramount franchises of Marvel: X-Men, Fantastic Four, and the Avengers. And that's, I think, their end game.
I see
if
what you did
only
there.
It would work.
We'll see.
They're hedging their bets. They're bringing back the Russos because fans like the Russos, but jokes on them. The Russos are TV directors that got very lucky because they had very good scripts to direct.
Yeah.
Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely.
That's like you get handled the golden egg from the golden goose. Just don't drop the egg and you're fine, right?
Right. Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, maybe they'll be back as well. I hope they will, because they wrote 9 properties at Marvel. And aside from Agent Carter, which I think is the only one that kind of was a dud, but that was more of a dud because it was a very expensive show and it was aired on ABC at a terrible time slot.
Was it really an expensive show? I haven't watched it, so I didn't know that.
It was a 1946 period piece, so they had to rent every single vintage car, which has a huge price tag. They had to shoot outside of downtown, outside of main locations, and also recreate and build physical sets of that era. They had to get vintage clothes and manufacture their own era style clothes as well. It was very expensive show. And
I keep meaning to actually check it out because I heard it was solid. I never checked it out.
Good. Second season was a little dodgy. They wrap up some loose ends with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was a horrible show.
Yep. Couldn't get.
I enjoyed the first season. After the first season, I started to lose interest very quickly. The second season went like this really fast for me.
Well, the thing is that they didn't define the rules as to what S.H.I.E.L.D. was, because you have S.H.I.E.L.D. is destroyed in Winter Soldier. What's S.H.I.E.L.D. now? Well, it's a group of 6 people on an air carrier flying around the world. That doesn't feel like S.H.I.E.L.D., and it doesn't feel like it's useful, and you burn
I
something that could
didn't
have
give
been
it that
awesome.
much of a chance. Oh, I cut out. Am I back?
Yeah,
No,
you're
you're here.
Yeah.
Your voice didn't cut out. Your
Video
video desynced from it.
New internet, new router. What the hell?
You need to like actually go down to your internet service provider's head office. You need to bring your router with you. You need to look them in the eye. You need to tell them to take that router, shine it up real nice.
Turn that
Right.
sumbitch sideways.
Turn that sumbitch sideways and shove it straight up their candy ass, because for whatever reason, you cannot get consistent internet there.
Well, it might not be the router and it might not be the modem. It just might be the lines, in which case you may have to look at Starlink as an option because it's a satellite internet feed. A little bit pricey, but decent upload and download for where it is. And it's because you're stationary. The only thing you have to worry about is some egregious weather, but they've done some decent tests for it. So,
Well, I got a fiber line possibly coming in tomorrow. So,
Oh, okay. So
Like, I've
fiber
never-
would be pretty solid.
I can't believe I've upgraded internet on like a Sunday, and then by the Wednesday, I'm going to have a new internet connection. So, yay me.
I don't even
Messed
have
up-
fiber.
The messed up part is every other streaming thing is great. Like I downloaded a game in minutes. All this other shit instantaneous. I'm just like, great. All right, we can do streaming with less interruptions and lag. No. So
no,
I'm just-
well, StreamYards and with a combination of Chrome or anything of that variant take up tons of processing resources on your computer. So it's not always your internet connection. Sometimes it's your machine trying to allocate the resources to broadcast to meet the needs of the connection and the services that you're using. Because I have a hybrid fiber line, and if I stream a movie or if I want to do my pulling from like a Netflix or something, I can do a 2-hour movie pull within 30 seconds. Like it's that fast. And you're looking at like a 10 gig file. So it's you have to have the machine as well. And that's why I don't use Google Chrome or any Google Chrome products, because they just
Chrome is so resource heavy. Like it
I
just
know, I
eats
use
up.
it, sadly.
It eats up it's unfortunate because there are a lot of websites that function best with it. But when you get into things like doing multiple resource heavy tasks at once, like streaming, all of a sudden that starts to compound and it becomes an issue.
Yep.
Whereas
and you can't
otherwise,
get rid
if
of
you,
Chrome, too. Once you install it on your computer, it's there forever. And you have to do like a full wipe and purge and everything. Yeah. So
freaking Google.
Yeah,
That's why.
well, Microsoft Edge isn't that much better.
it isn't, but you can at least hide it a lot easier.
I like to use Opera when I can.
Yep. That's mine as well. My favorite.
So, guys, with all this doom and gloom talk of Marvel, do you think DC is going to be able to benefit from any of this stuff, or do you think the apathy is across the genre and they're kind of just walking into a dead game?
Well, this weekend's box office for Deadpool and Wolverine would say that the apathy is not for the genre. It's really just they want something that's going to entertain.
They just want something fun.
James Gunn officially announced today that he has finished principal photography on Superman.
I actually
I saw
sent
that.
Jeff that DM just a little bit ago.
Yeah,
That's where I saw
it. And so now he's in post-production and editing. So a year from now, we're going to see what this is like. I really hope the trailer is great. I really hope we get to see how that Mego style costume looks on film. And so I mean, the other part too is, again, Superman is supposed to be a character in a world that is not so nice, and he's supposed to be a nice guy in a world that's not so nice. And
he's a Boy Scout in a world with no other Boy Scouts.
And the one thing that's been kind of consistent with what James Gunn has been doing over at DC is he's been making fun of the dark Zack Snyder-y tones. Suicide Squad is showing all the dark badass stuff, but he's making all those characters fools and idiots.
Yeah.
In Peacemaker, which I really enjoyed, he is mocking the language and nudity and all the edgy stuff that Zack Snyder was doing by having one of those ridiculous characters be the front man for it.
Right.
And basically saying, like, you should be laughing at what Zack Snyder was doing, and I'm showing you how funny it actually is, but just cutting away we're trying to be edgy and cool stuff by actually making fun of the fact that they're trying to be edgy and cool. And I think with this
he's doing it unironically, we're doing it ironically.
Yeah,
right?
and I think with him, he's basically saying, now here's the actual official thing. We're going to show you this is the world that those guys made and how horrible it is. And now we're going to bring in a hopeful, aspirational Superman character to basically say, this is how it should be. And because he's going to win in this movie, you should actually agree with my perspective, like me being James Gunn at this point, my perspective that this is what you need for superheroes to be.
Here's simultaneously my hope, my honest, sincere hope, as well as my honest, sincere concern. Because the MCU wound up hyper centralizing the industry around cape shit. And I come from comics. I love cape shit. I love superheroes. I want superhero films. I want superhero films that are good. However, what I don't want is for superhero films to be so dominant that everybody feels like they need to make some sort of interconnected universe, and all of a sudden everybody's trying their own hand at some sort of a superhero knockoff thing that I don't want to say burnout, but I feel like I'm not getting access to much else. Because right now, and within the last few years, because of the drop in quality of the MCU, and one could argue DCU never had quality to drop off from, really, thanks to Snyder, with the exception of a couple of diamonds in the rough, really, I guess. We've been able to see some other films that have done really well that are completely outside of that genre, right? I am so enthused. Like the inner 7-year-old me is ecstatic for the fact that I'm getting Godzilla films like Godzilla -1 and Godzilla X Kong New Empire within like a 6-month period of each other. I love that I'm getting good action films. I love that, there are films that, even though I haven't seen it yet, I've heard a lot of generally good things about, something like Twisters, right? We're seeing other films that are doing well. Oppenheimer was a success. I haven't seen Barbie. Barbie's not exactly my thing. Barbie did well. I'm glad that movie's audience went and had fun, but I want there to be a lack of centralization. I want there to be a decentralization in terms of genre when it comes to movies and really entertainment in general. I want to be able to look forward to fantastic and fun Godzilla films every bit as much as I would love to have a fantastic, truly good Superman film for the first time since I've been alive, really. And I would like that for a ton of different genres. So I hope that movies like, I don't think Fantastic Four is going to be it, but I hope movies like Superman Legacy, and I hope movies like, Avengers Doomsday, and maybe some others really move the needle and swing the pendulum back towards quality, and that we can get a return to quality when it comes to superhero films, but that doesn't detract from studios' willingness to also explore and put out films of quality in other genres and other franchises. Because I don't like the idea that I only get good Godzilla films in a world where superhero films are bad. Because I want both. And I see no reason why I can't have both. I just need the industry to stop being so centralized.
Well, Hollywood is actually not centralized. They have they have the major 5 studios, but they have thousands of other subsidiaries and other independent studios that make contracts with them. The issue being is that the quality control is not
non-existent.
Yeah. That's basically it. Because again, if it was so centralized, you'd never have a Godzilla X Con. You wouldn't, because they they'd be focusing only on the tentpole.
Godzilla is a hyper niche franchise.
Yeah, the other part, like Toho, would be doing it only.
Yeah. We would have gotten Godzilla -1, and it wouldn't have even aired in the U.S. probably.
Sorry, somebody's calling with a emergency there. Probably is for that. But again, like the whole use of the studio system is that they want to hit all the genres that they can, and they want to make them. They'll make them for the budgets that they think are appropriate with regards to the market return value. Right now, superheroes has dominated the last decade. They're looking for something else to replace it. In fact, since the turn of the century, they've been touting superhero fatigue, but there's no such thing as it. And producers, when they started seeing the budgets get bigger, have been saying, we really want to make more reasonable, low budget films because you get more return on the more smaller movies you make. You get a higher return on their actual value, because it's not just on the box office, it's also on their subsequent window distribution. So what ended up happening between 2012 and 2019 is the studio stopped making all of those things. They got closer towards what you were saying with the centralization. We're just going to focus on these tentpole films, and then we're just going to pepper out these smaller ones, and we're not really going to put any real marketing behind them, so that you're not really going to know what they are. We got our DC over at Warner Brothers, we got our Marvel over at Disney, along with Star Wars, Indiana Jones. What does Paramount have? Well, they have Terminator for the moment. Then you've got Minions over at Universal, and then you got Sony's got nothing other than maybe a couple of obscure films, and then there's Spider-Man stuff. And they've managed to get course corrected with Ghostbusters, but even that's still an uphill battle for them at the moment.
They ruined Men in Black.
Yeah, they already ruined Men in Black. So yeah, they're not doing anything with that for a while, and they decided not to follow up with any more 21 Jump Street films for some stupid reason, even though those are actually doing really well, those two. So what is happening now is, like, whatever studio, and I think it's going to be Warner Brothers, whatever studio is going to end up making the $1 billion hit that's under $120 million budget is going to lead the reign, is going to lead the industry, and then everybody else is going to follow in suit. And then we're going to get into this new goal, which is, how little can I spend to make $1 billion? And that's where you're going to start getting more movies, but they're going to be of a different quality. You also have to remember that you can't oversaturate your market. And some of these studios are going to have to make the hard call and saying, instead of trying to release like 50 movies a year, we might have to go back to the model of like 22 to 23. So that we're basically releasing a new movie every other weekend, and we're only going to, and we'll drive the ones for the summer and winter box office, some of the holiday weekends and whatnot. But we really have to start making smaller films that really, hit all the emotional marks needed to better their odds to satisfy audiences, and also have a good distribution deal for not just physical media and streaming services, but to the point where we can exploit all those other avenues before they land up on our own private service that should be treated as an archive. Whereas, like, hey, remember that movie that you haven't seen in 30 years and you can't find it anywhere because it's kind of either in limited print or out of print? Well, guess what? You subscribe to our streaming service, it will be there, and it will always be there because we own the movie.
Yeah.
That's the final destination. And it's going to take a few years for Hollywood to figure that out. I think Warner Brothers is the closest one to it right now. But I don't know. Universal might sweep in there because they've got Peacock, and Peacock is the only streaming service that is making money given how little they spend on it overall. So we'll have to wait and see. But
it's the WWE, man. I'm telling you.
Well, I mean, don't they have a Netflix deal too?
Not in America. That's not how it works. You have to keep Peacock to get all the pay-per-views and to have access to their archive for at least like 4 more years. So,
oh wow, okay.
Yeah, remember when Michael Cole was advertising the WWE Network as like Netflix, but better?
Yeah, wrestling fans are loyal. We don't always get the best of things, but when we do, we're there for it. Oh, I'm really feeling this feathering. Okay, so I actually sent you guys show notes today. Let me check those real quick to make sure we've well, we kind of covered everything.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Well, there we go.
We took the scenic route, but we did get there.
So, is there anything else you guys would like to say before we put this episode to bed?
I mean, it's so easy to dig on and knock on things right now because, I guess, to a fair point, they give us every excuse, it seems like, to be able to do so. I would like to not have those excuses anymore. I would like to be at the point where I'm having to nitpick things pretty heavily to find something wrong with it. I would like to just kind of enjoy the movies again. And obviously that came across as a blanket statement. That is specifically with regards to things like Marvel, with things like DC, with things like Star Wars. There are plenty of other franchises out there where I've consistently had a great time with for the last several years. No complaints. I love all the MonsterVerse Godzilla films. I love all the Mission Impossible films. I still need to see Twisters. I've heard great things about it. There are plenty of other franchises out there and worthwhile films to go see and invest your time and your money into, things like Oppenheimer and plenty of other films, and other mediums of entertainment as well. However, I would like to have my cake and eat it too. I would also like DC, Star Wars, and Marvel to not be shit again. So if y'all could get your stuff together and give me those things packaged well, I would be very appreciative. And I would gladly give you my money for them. Please do that.
I would like a new James Bond movie at some point, Hollywood. Like,
It's actually James Bond.
I just mean anything at this point, because we sat through the Daniel Craig ones. They're not making anything right now. There's nothing in production. There's nothing even planned to be in production. James Bond is essentially a dead franchise right now. So
It's
Thank you,
collecting dust
Daniel
rather
Craig.
quickly. Yeah.
It's
Well-
only been, what, 2 years since the last one? Does that count as dead?
For something like Bond, yes, because one of the things that made
Okay,
Bond
that was a
Bond is
legitimate
that
question.
at the end of every Bond movie, they would announce another Bond.
Okay.
In some way. And this one, as far as I recall, I haven't seen it, but I don't remember anyone talking about seeing James Bond will return in whatever.
Well, he dies in the last movie.
Yeah,
Like, there's
exactly.
Yeah,
dead.
that canon, that series of films is done. Right.
Exactly. So
Okay.
I think right now they're in development stage with figuring out what the direction of Bond is going to be. And they have to start working quickly because again, whenever you've got an IP that you're not trying to make into make money off of, you're losing it second by second, day by day. The Broccoli's, I know, do not want to be losing any more money on this because again, even though James Bond is public domain in a number of countries throughout the world, they still have the rights to a varying degree in the United States. And there's some more complicated rights in the UK, but regardless, like they do know that they want to make another one. The fact that they barely moved on it, and I think what was it? They got there's rumors floating around about the guy who's playing Craven, possibly
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Andrew Taylor Johnson. I don't think that's going to happen. Craven's going to put him back into a supporting role character again, a character actor again. I'm sorry.
And he's not a bad actor. He's just like he's not an amazing actor either, to be clear.
He's not
He's
leading
serviceable.
man material. That's the problem.
Mhm. I actually like him in Godzilla 2014, but
Yeah.
he doesn't carry that movie. He does his job and does it well in that movie. Like he's not meant to be a character that props up the movie, that he's supposed to be carrying it on his shoulders.
No, he's a different style. He's a character actor who I think his management team and his agency are trying to make him into a leading man, and it's doing more damage than good. And listen, I don't blame them for trying to, because leading men make a lot more money than a character actor, but a character actor works more consistently. So when you add it up all at the end of the day, they end up being the ones that make more money, by the end of the career than the leading man does, with the exceptions
Right.
maybe Tom Cruise, because he's been making $20 million movies for the last 35 years.
Good for that dude.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I would love to see another James Bond. I would love it if they would just lean into the fact that it's a 60s Cold War era thing. It's always going to be in the 60s, no other decades. Just have fun with it. Good gadget stuff. Play around with it.
I bet you they're waiting to see Fantastic Four if people care about that. If that's viable, I bet you Bond goes that way.
That's an interesting point.
They should, because I've mentioned it on this channel before. X-Men First Class was a period piece 60s film that did way better financially than it had any right to. and without Wolverine on it.
Well, it was also just a pretty solid film overall.
And the thing is, the style and look that they did, they nailed it. And if Bryan Singer didn't weasel his way in there and start pushing ahead in the decades and trying to do all these other stories, I think Fox would have been in a better position to play around with that team in that decade for a few more films and really have made people quite happy. But no, they decided to get arrogant and foolish. I think if the Broccoli's were smart, they would take that into account. They'd take a look at Fantastic Four, see how well that plays, and then ideally, if they perform well, take a swing and be like, "Yep, we're doing Bond in the '60s. We are going to treat these IPs like the Greek gods that they are.
I'm totally open to
Hercules
that.
in ancient Greece and not bringing him to New York."
I mean, I'm completely open to that because, and I don't have any particular, sentimental attachment to the Bond franchise as a whole. I enjoy it, but like when I want spy films, Mission Impossible is my thing. That's where I go to. And so if I want something that's set in a more modern day, I'll just watch Mission Impossible. So I'm completely open to going back to like the 60s era with Bond and seeing if they can actually put together a really good period piece with that. I'm 100% down with that.
Well, you get to avoid all these bitching and whining people on the internet. Oh, James Bond's offensive. It's a stereotype. It's
You're still going to get that anyway because people are stupid on the internet.
Go, you can just shut people up. It takes place in the 60s when things were different. Get over it. Like, just fuck all those people.
Yeah.
Not only that, one thing that I know, especially about women, is that they love retro hairstyles when they're done well and professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And you are going to get the classic bobs and beehives in a 60s era film, especially one that hits well. And that's how you get a resurgence. I mean, you guys might be a little bit too young to remember, but I don't think you were. But in the late 90s, we had a 1970s revival with Farrah Fawcett hair and Bell.
Oh, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And it was adjusted to be a bit more contemporary at that time, but it worked and people liked it. And it was kind of like the last fashion identity we've had, because since the turn of the century, nothing has really changed aesthetically with regards to fashion and whatnot. So yeah, sometimes you might have to go back to some classics to find a new now, and you got to pick a decade. And they've already done the 70s would be the most recent one. Why not go back another decade to the 60s with suits and sundresses and not the pointed bras though; those were stupid. But but some of the other stuff that was out there, because never know, there might be a way to reincorporate it into this blandness that we're dealing with right now. And I think we're seeing something kind of interesting where, there are certain stories that need to be set in the time with which they were written, like the Greek myths of Hercules, the Iliad, Odysseus, all those stuff. They work for those periods. And I think we've actually hit a threshold where we're starting to realize, like, yeah, you know what? Some of those characters, Buck Rogers, took place in, 1930s, 40s, 50s. Retro future, maybe that's how it's got to be. We got to honor it to be as a retro future, not make it contemporary to our stuff now. James Bond, 1960s Cold War. Heck, you can even get away with 1950s Cold War if you really want to, because there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe, when the MCU finally hits their threshold and breaking point where they're like, okay, we're ending the official Marvel Cinematic Universe and we're going to start a new Marvel Cinematic Universe. Maybe they will commit to the actual era period piece of those superheroes at that time. We'll get a 1960s Iron Man with a bulky Iron Man suit that looks, decade appropriate. Same with the Spider-Man and whatnot, because those are where those stories work out well. Maybe we'll get a 1940s Batman film and a 1940s Superman film. That works.
I think this Caped Crusaders cartoon will definitely dictate how they'll play around with the Batman timeline, because you're doing early Golden Age style. Well, yeah, it's golden. Batman. I think if you're gonna do it, I think too many people are into the modern version of Batman to do a faithful one, at least for a few more years, until those kids that were like really young for the Brave and the Bold, are like, yeah, that's the Batman I want. We're still in that post Frank Miller grimdark age, sadly.
Which unfortunately we've been in for 40 years. Yep. And you know what? Yeah, it is kind of sad because I still think that even though Batman does have a darkness edge to him, there's a big light in his core. And that's why I really appreciate the 60s Batman, because not only does it feel very authentic to the character's core, even though it could be a little edgier, it's also a comedy show that's making fun of a lot of stupid politics as well. Like, it makes fun of liberals, it makes fun of conservatives, and it does it in such a way you don't even realize they're doing it. Making fun of academia, making fun of rehabilitation programs, making fun of abusive prison programs, making fun of hippies. It's all sorts of crazy stuff.
They're not people, they're hippies.
Yeah. And it does that with great intelligence. Heck, Wild Wild West was doing the same thing. A lot of the same writers and people working on that show as well. But yeah, I think we're getting to a threshold where, yeah, there are certain intellectual properties that have a home in time, and that's where they're going to be. And ideally, what that should do is should motivate people to start creating newer IPs that are of this time. But since this time is so bland, it doesn't really have any distinct vibe to it. I think that's causing a gap, a creative gap in what should be being pursued today. So until we can kind of figure out culturally how to create an identity, because we don't really have one other than bitching, and that's not fun. We probably we should probably start, saying, you know what, this thing here, I think that's a 70s style show that belongs to the 70s. That's an 80s style topic that belongs to the 80s. That's where we should stick those things. That should be, play into a little bit of nostalgia, but have fun with the authenticity of what that characters were, who those characters were, what they stood for that time when they were created, and maybe rebuild a foundation of how we as a species, look back on our past, honestly, and through the eyes of fiction. And you can do that with characters like James Bond, Batman, Superman, The Shadow, The Phantom, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, all those types.
I'm really looking forward to like a 1930 style universe to take off. That'd be cool. And then if Disney wouldn't have ruined it, man, throw Indiana Jones in there too. That's when I would have been okay with CGI Harrison Ford. It's like, oh my God, CGI Harrison Ford just so happened to be in, the Phantoms, or the Shadow's the 30s, right?
The Shadow and the Phantom are all 1930s, along with Doc Savage.
And to be fair, so is Indiana Jones, 1936. So yeah, there we go.
You have a great World War II. You have a great combination with them. Maybe you can get like Mandrake the Magician in there.
Dude, it just would be amazing. But we're gonna
Indiana
get
Jones and the Defenders of the Earth. If you want
to, like that old cartoon from the 80s.
Yeah,
something slightly before my time. Didn't even know it was a thing until a couple of years back when they started making toys of it. No, the Broccoli's didn't marry into the family. Broccoli's bought the rights. I said his daughter was just born into the role. Into him. Yeah,
because Albert Broccoli bought part of the rights from, God, what was his name? I'm forgetting it right now.
Who, Harry Saltzman?
Yes, I think so. And
well, yeah, because Harry Saltzman got in bad with like debt, and he owned a restaurant that was bleeding him dry. It was all kinds of stuff. It's all on the Bond documentaries.
Yeah. And then that's basically how they ended up getting complete control. And then, of course, Barbara inherited it and did okay for a while there. And I don't know what's going on. Maybe she's got dementia or something.
I honestly think she really likes Daniel Craig, and she let Daniel Craig make, a
little bit more decisions
than he should have. And so James Bond kind of just became something that the name was getting people pumped, but each subsequent movie became something not James Bondian because they were too influenced by the social conversation around the history, the problematic. It's like, shut the fuck up, okay?
He's a state agent that kills innocent people and some guilty ones without trial or due process. Like, he's
not a hero.
A complicated guy. He's not really a hero. I mean, yeah.
Well, don't say that kind of stuff to these people on the internet, man, because they just don't know how to handle it. They're like, oh, what? It's like, yes, people. Some of these characters aren't good guys. They're the heroes of the story. Or in the case of Bond, he's the least bad person sometimes.
That's actually the thing that makes Bond fun, is that it's one bad guy going against a slightly worse guy, or in some cases, an extremely worse guy. Because in most situations, it's like, this person with a lot of money in a private enterprise is, I think, going to exterminate or sterilize the whole planet. And we know that's bad. So we're just going to point you in the direction to go kill him.
I'm glad you went straight to Moonraker.
Well, I mean, that's just the easiest one to kind of understand what Bond is and also keep him as a hero to a degree. But then you deal with something like, for instance, Thunderball.
The
Well,
hero of a story isn't always necessarily a good person in isolation.
True. But ideally, what you want them to be is to be a little bit. You want to be able to get on their side and see them as the protagonist, and you know, the one you want to support and cheer for against, you know, the adversary that they're doing.
Yeah.
What were you saying about Thunderball?
Well, Thunderball's a little bit more complex in that regard, right? Because he's stealing ships, and I can't remember.
No, Thunderball is about Blofeld has a nuke that he's going to drop if
Right.
they don't pay him a couple $100 million or whatever.
Yeah, he's holding the world hostage. That's right.
That's not a bad Bond movie by any stretch, but man, it is a long one, and the underwater sequences, whew, they drag on.
Well, yeah, well, because you didn't get a whole bunch of it. It was one of the first times they were shooting a lot of stuff underwater, and actually underwater, not in a fake thing with them on wires and pretend and bubbles being, you know, blown out in front of the camera lens. But yeah, they went too long.
It's funny you make that reference to the fake underwater stuff. They went back to it in For Your Eyes Only because the actors had a bad ear infection, so none of the underwater shots in that movie are actually underwater shots.
No, they used they used wind fans, air guns, and they would then fill up a tank, like a 4-inch tank, put it in front of the lens, and then get that distortion in there.
Let's see. The more problematic, the better. I agree, Leighton Swallow. I agree. So, guys, it's about to be midnight, so I think it's time to wrap this up so I can have a normal day tomorrow and get back to some WCBS business. But Andrew, Script, thank you as always. Guys, is there anything you want to say before we go?
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. We got the best audience on a Tuesday night. Appreciate every single one of you for hanging out in the chat, whether you are here on YouTube, whether you're over on Twitter, whether you're on...
Not tonight. We're not on Rumble because for some reason that would not connect. I made it on Rumble, but it's just like...
Well, I tried. We appreciate those of you who attempted to watch us on Rumble as well. So you guys are awesome. Thank you for hanging out with us every single Tuesday night. Thank you for watching the Thursday night show with the guys. Thank you for watching...
we got more shows.
Good Morning
coming,
Pop
folks.
Culture. Because
Well,
Good Morning Pop Culture is one of my favorite shows. So keep watching that.
Drink your unsweetened tea, fellers. It's good for your blood pressure. I do drink unsweetened tea.
Yeah.
A lot, actually. So I get a lot of caffeine, I guess. Yeah, it's not even 9 o'clock where you live, Janice. When I was living out in California, I'd be getting off the show. I'm like, yep, it's now dinner time. So
Yeah.
let's have dinner. But I've eaten. I'm an old man. I eat dinner at 6 o'clock. Oof. Grandpa age.
7.
Yeah,
Wait,
I
is it
usually
4
eat dinner around that time and then maybe have a bowl of cereal later, like Fiber One. That's
I know,
old.
that's like
See,
the
I
life,
wish you wouldn't have brought up cereal because now I got boxes of Cinnamon Life. Because I don't know how it is in Canada for you, but here it's like a box of cereal will be like $8. Well, this is just hypothetical. Fine, we'll use Pop. Pop will be $10 for a 12-pack. But if you buy 5 of them, they come out to be like $3 or $4. So you get stuck buying these huge amounts.
Yeah,
and that was how Life cereal was. I'm like, wait, it's cheaper to buy 5 boxes of Life cereal than it is to buy 2 individual ones.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah, like I buy from Walmart like 10 boxes of cereal and I get like a bulk discount. So that's what it works out to. And the only reason because the Walmart's the only store that stocks the Fiber One cereal that is plain and no sugar.
I don't have a lot of unsweetened stuff. Let's see. I'm going to try to log into this real quick for the audience. Wait, what is that? Sorry, folks. People are like, read the email, read the email. I'm trying to get to the email. There it logged in now. Let's see. Crap, I got to respond. All right, so let me... Sorry, I shouldn't read emails on the air because now I'm just like, hey. Let's see. Clone Geek's email. I know the whole world is on me. My musings on Wonder Woman. You brought up Wonder Woman 84, and I wish the film was a lot better than it ended up being. Me too. I think the first mistake of the film was not having a way to permanently bring back Steve Trevor, because in my eyes, he was the real highlight of those films. Excuse me. The whole body possession wasn't a good idea and raises some serious consent issues. Yeah, she definitely grape-soded that guy. I would have rather had Diana going into a Greek underworld for whatever reason, which leads her to finding Steve's shade in the underworld or something like that. The thing with comics is that modern-day creators forget that you're drawn into the books because of the art, but you stay for the characters. Also, even if you ever start Ramen One Half, please tell me your thoughts after the Ryoga intro arc, because that's when the core character dynamics really start coming together. Thank you, Clone Geek. Well, thank you, Clone Geek. Let me know where to, well, how many episodes or how many issues is that into it? Oh, man. People are talking about, let's see. When I get late like this, I see people talk about cereal and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I can't eat. So I'm going to go to bed. But yeah.
Same.
I'm sorry, that was my fault.
Oh, no. That's talking about Cinnamon Life cereal. That's delicious. Yes, I know. I got a magic spoon, no grain cereal. Oh, Swiss rolls.
I've opened a well.
There are so many good treats. I'll have a grapefruit. Folks, thank you for watching. I'll be back on Thursday with more. I'll have a video tomorrow, so keep helping us grow to 200K. We're hitting it by the end of this year. Damn it, I'm making it happen. So heed that angry fist, share the word, spread the word, if you will. But until next time, folks, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.
I don't have friends.